Hey guys, tonight we are traveling way back. Not just a few hundred years, but a few thousand. We are going to a place where the sun is a relentless, white-hot disk in the sky. The air is so dry it feels like it is pulling the moisture right out of your skin, and the landscape is a stunning, almost monotonous, masterpiece of golden blue. We are going to ancient Egypt, and tonight, you are not a pharaoh, nor a high priest, nor a celebrated warrior. You are just you, an ordinary person trying to navigate daily life along the Nile. Then let me tell you, just getting through the day is a challenge. Forget about pyramids and golden masks for a moment. Your first priority is simply not to get a blistering sunburn or be blinded by the sheer intensity of the light. Honestly, you would probably be wishing for a pair of sunglasses within the first hour. But those are still about 3,000 years away. So, you have to improvise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world. And while you are at it, let me know in the comments what city you are listening from, and what time it is for you. It is always fascinating to see where everyone is tuning in from across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let us ease into tonight's journey together. The heat hits you first. It is not a humid, sticky heat, but a dry, baking warmth that seems to radiate from the very ground itself. You are standing in the doorway of a simple mud brick house, the kind that lines the bustling streets of a town not far from the life-giving Nile. The air smells of baked bread, river water, and dust. Inside, it is cooler, the thick walls doing their job of keeping the worst of the sun at bay. Your eyes adjust to the dim light, and you see a family member, perhaps your sister or mother, crouched over a small, flat stone pallet. It is a beautiful object, carved from a piece of gray slate, shaped perhaps like a fish or simply a smooth rectangle. In her hand, she holds a small, smooth stone pestle, and with a rhythmic, hypnotic motion, she grinds a dark, crumbly substance into a fine, silky powder. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The sound is a familiar part of the daily routine, as common as the call of a distant donkey or the chatter of neighbors. You move closer. She is making kohl, the iconic black makeup that you see on nearly everyone, from the highest-ranking official to the humble farmer working the fields. But this is not just about looking good. This is your first lesson in ancient Egyptian beauty. It is almost always functional. The primary purpose of this thick, dark eyeliner is to protect your eyes. You have seen what the sun can do. It bounces off the pale sand and the shimmering surface of the river with a glare so fierce, it makes your eyes water and your head ache. The kohl, when applied in a thick, almond shape around your eyes, works like a natural pair of sunglasses, cutting down on that blinding reflection. It is the same principle modern athletes use when they smudge black paint under their eyes to see the ball better. You watch as she adds a tiny bit of animal fat or oil to the dark powder, working it into a smooth, dense paste. The powder itself is called galena. It is a heavy, dark gray mineral, a natural form of lead sulfide. When ground, it has a faint metallic sheen, a dark shimmer that is highly prized. This is what gives the kohl its deep, lasting blackness. You lean in, smelling the earthy, slightly metallic scent of the compound. It smells of the earth, of the mine it came from. It smells ancient. She looks up at you and gestures with the small, thin stick of wood or ivory she will use for application. It is your turn. Applying it is a skill. You have to learn to hold your eye steady, to draw a line that is both bold and delicate, extending from the corner of your eye out towards your temple. It feels cool against your skin at first, a soothing sensation. You blink, and the world seems a little less harsh, the light a little more bearable. You feel protected. And here lies a fascinating debate that historians and scientists are still puzzling over to this day. The Egyptians were, without a doubt, being slowly poisoned by the lead in their makeup. Chronic exposure to lead can lead to a host of terrifying problems, from neurological damage to organ failure. They could not have known the long-term science of it. However, recent studies have shown that in very small doses, these lead compounds could have stimulated an immune response, producing nitric oxide that helped fight off certain bacterial eye infections, a common ailment in the dusty, fly-ridden environment of the Nile Valley. So, the big question remains, were they just using galena because it was the best, blackest pigment they could find, and its protective qualities were a dangerous coincidence? Or were these ancient people such masterful chemists that they intentionally synthesized these specific lead chlorides in a kind of ancient preventative medicine, believing its magic was more powerful than its poison? We may never know for sure. But as you look at your reflection in a polished piece of bronze, you do not see the danger. You see a tradition, a shield against the sun, and the first, essential step to looking and feeling human in the land of the pharaohs. You blink a few times, getting used to the sensation. The line of kohl feels like a cool, smooth weight on your eyelids, a strange but not unpleasant presence. The world, viewed through your newly framed eyes, seems to have a sharper contrast. The shadows are deeper, the light less overwhelming. It is as if someone has turned down the brightness of the world just for you. You catch your reflection again in that piece of polished bronze that serves as a mirror. The person staring back looks different, more intense, more complete. Your eyes, which you have always just considered well, eyes are now the focal point of your face. They seem larger, more luminous, and hold a depth they did not have just a few moments ago. The almond shape, tapering to a long, elegant point, is not just a line, it is a statement. You turn your attention back to the grinding palette. This is not just a utilitarian object. It is a piece of art in its own right. Yours is a simple slate rectangle, worn smooth in the center from generations of use. But you have seen others. Wealthier families have palettes carved into the shape of a Nile perch, a turtle, or a hippo. They are treasured possessions, passed down from mother to daughter. The act of grinding the kohl is a small daily ritual, a quiet moment of transformation. You take the pestle yourself, feeling its cool, heavy weight in your palm. You take a small, dark chunk of galena. It looks like a lump of glittery gray rock and begin the grinding motion. It takes patience. You cannot rush it, or you will end up with a gritty, uncomfortable paste. You have to work it slowly, back and forth, until the rock breaks down into a powder as fine as silt. This galena, the heart of your kohl, is precious. It does not just bubble up from the Nile mud. It comes from mines, deep in the eastern desert or across the sea in Sinai. It requires arduous labor to extract, and long, perilous journeys by caravan or boat to bring it to your town. Its value means that your little pot of kohl is a small measure of your family's status. The darker, the smoother, the more pure the galena, the more it speaks of your connection to the wider world of trade and resources. You add a drop of clarified butter, just as you were taught. Some families use castor oil or other plant-based fats. You have heard that the truly wealthy have secret recipes, adding powdered charcoal for a deeper black, or even a pinch of frankincense so that a subtle, sacred scent rises from their eyes when they stand in the heat of the sun. Now, for the application, you have seen the priests do it, and it is a method that requires immense trust and a steady hand. They do not just draw a line on the outside. They use a thin, smooth stick, often made of hematite or ivory. They dip the stick into the kohl paste, and then, closing their eyes gently, they place the stick at the inner corner of the eye and draw it straight through between the closed lids. It is a slightly unnerving thought. The idea is to coat the waterline, the very edge of your eyelids, creating an unbroken seal of black. This is considered the most effective way to protect the eye from dust and flies, and to deliver the magical and medicinal properties of the kohl directly to the part of the body that needs it. You have not tried it that way yourself yet. The thought of that stick sliding between your eyelids makes you flinch, but you see others do it with a practiced ease that tells you it is just another part of life here. It is this belief in its protective power that truly anchors the practice. Your grandmother would tell you that the kohl creates a magical barrier. That turns away the evil eye and wards off the spirits that carry disease. The children with kohl-rimmed eyes are said to be less likely to suffer from the weeping eye sickness that plagues the villages in the flood season. And this is where ancient belief brushes up against modern science in a fascinating way. Historians and scientists still debate the true effect of the lead-based kohl. On one hand, the long-term, cumulative effect of lead absorption is undeniably toxic. It is a slow, invisible poison that builds up in the body over a lifetime. But, on the other hand, chemical analysis of ancient kohl pots has revealed the presence of laureon at phosgenite, to lead chlorides that do not occur naturally and must have been intentionally synthesized by Egyptian chemists. These specific compounds, as mentioned before, could stimulate the immune system to fight certain infections. So, when your grandmother told you the kohl repelled the sickness, was she just repeating a superstition? Or was she passing down the practical results of an ancient pharmaceutical science that worked, even if the users and the makers did not understand the precise biological mechanism? Only that it did. This question, of whether it was intentional medicine or a hazardous cosmetic with a lucky side effect, is a puzzle that keeps the experts arguing. For you, however, there is no argument. You just know that it works. Everyone knows it works. It is why you do it. Every single day, you step out of the cool dimmings of your house and back into the vibrant, sun-drenched street. The change is immediate. The kohl around your eyes does its job, muting the harsh glare off the whitewashed walls of the neighboring houses. You feel more prepared, more presentable. As you walk towards the local market, you start to notice it everywhere. It is not just the women. It is everyone. The burly farmer leading his donkey, its panniers laden with melons, has his eyes lined. The two scribes sitting in a sliver of shade, arguing over a papyrus scroll. Both sport perfectly applied, sophisticated cat-eye shapes. A group of soldiers, their muscular arms bare and their bronze-tipped spears glinting in the sun, walk by with the same dark makeup. Even the children, chasing a dog down a dusty alley, have small, smudged circles of kohl around their eyes, applied by their mothers that morning. This is a profound realization for you. Makeup, in your world, is not a gendered concept. It is not about vanity or seduction in the way later cultures might define it. Here, it is a fundamental part of public identity. To appear in public without your kohl would be like appearing without your clothes. It would be considered strange, unkempt, and frankly, a bit careless. It would suggest you do not care about protecting yourself from the sun. from disease, or from malevolent spirits. It is a sign of civilization, of being a proper, well cared for person, a person who understands how the world works. You see a priest walking towards you, his head shaved and gleaming, his white linen robes immaculate. His makeup is the most elaborate of all. The lines of his kohl are impossibly precise, extending back towards his ears in a design that is both beautiful and intimidating. His makeup signifies his sacred duty, his role as an intermediary between the world of humans and the world of the gods. The gods themselves, you know from the temple walls, are always depicted with perfect kohl-lined eyes. By wearing it, you are, in a small way, emulating them. You are making yourself more godlike, more worthy of their attention and protection. It is a tribute, a form of worship you wear on your face every day. The social hierarchy is also painted right there on people's faces. While everyone wears kohl, the quality and application tell a story. You can see the difference between the thick, slightly clumpy kohl on the farmer, likely made at home with animal fat and whatever galena he could trade for, and the fine, sulky, jet black line on the wife of a wealthy official. Hers was probably made by a servant, using the finest imported galena, perhaps mixed with expensive oils. Her makeup kit, you imagine, would be a work of art itself, with pots of carved alabaster, applicators of ivory, and a mirror of highly polished silver. Not just bronze. You pass a construction site where a new tomb is being prepared for a local dignitary. The laborers, their bodies slick with sweat, are hauling massive blocks of stone. Even they, performing the most strenuous physical work imaginable, have their eyes decorated. It is practical. Yes, it keeps the dust and the sun out of their eyes as they toil. But it is also a matter of dignity. They are not just anonymous workers. They are men of Egypt, participating in a sacred task, and they present themselves accordingly. And then there is the magic of it. You have heard the stories, the incantations that are sometimes whispered as the kohl is ground and applied. Words that invoke the protection of Horus, the falcon-headed god whose own eye was famously torn out and then magically restored. The shape you draw around your eye, that distinctive almond shape, is a direct imitation of the eye of Horus, or the eye. It is a powerful amulet you wear directly on your body. You do not just hope it will protect you. You believe it will. This belief is as solid and real as the mud bricks of your home. Historians have long debated the exact balance between the practical and the magical in the Egyptian mind. Did they truly distinguish between them? Or were they one and the same? For them, the statement "this kohl stops the sun's glare and this kohl repels the demon of blindness" might not have been two different ideas. They could have been two ways of describing the same fundamental truth. The physical world and the spiritual world were not separate realms. They were deeply, inextricably intertwined. So, as you barter for some dates at a market stall, you do so with the confidence that you are properly attired. You are not just a person. You are a person participating in a complex, shared cultural language. Your makeup is your badge of identity, a declaration that you belong here, in this specific time and place. It is a uniform for the entire population, a unifying thread that runs through every level of society, from the divine pharaoh on his golden throne, to the baby sleeping in a reed basket. And it is a tradition so powerful, so deeply embedded, that it will endure for thousands of years. Long after the gods it was meant to honor have fallen silent. After securing your dates, you wander deeper into the market. The air is thick with the smells of spices, livestock, and humanity. You pass a woman selling fabrics, her fingers stained with dye. She catches your eye and gives you a knowing smile. Her face, like yours, is adorned with kohl, but you notice something else. Her skin has a pale, almost luminous quality, a stark contrast to the sun-darkened skin of the field workers. It is a complexion that speaks of a life spent indoors, away from the harsh rays of the sun. This, you realize, is another pillar of Egyptian beauty, the pursuit of a lighter skin tone, especially for women of a certain class. You touch your own cheek. The sun is a constant companion here, and a golden brown tan is the natural state for most people. But the ideal, the image you see painted on the walls of tombs and temples, is different. In those stylized depictions, men are typically shown with a reddish-brown ochre skin, signifying a life of activity and outdoor work. Women of high status, however, are often unpainted with a much lighter, yellow ochre or even pale cream color. It is a visual shorthand for class. A pale complexion meant you did not have to toil in the fields. It meant you had servants. You lived a life of leisure, and your beauty was a cultivated, protected thing, like a rare flower grown in a shaded garden. Curious, you approached all that sells not food or cloth, but cosmetics. It is a fascinating display. Small pots of alabaster and clay are filled with powders and pastes of different colors. The stall owner, a man with shrewd, kohl-rimmed eyes, gestures for you to look. He shows you a finely ground red ochre powder. This, he explains, can be mixed with a little water or oil and applied to the lips for a touch of color, a practice favored by some women. But what you are really interested in is the foundation. He points to a pot containing a very light, almost white powder. He tells you it is a special clay, mixed with ground alabaster, or sometimes, for the very wealthy, a lead-based pigment. You dab a little on the back of your hand. It feels checky and dry. To achieve that smooth, pale look, you would have to mix it with some kind of base, probably fat or oil, creating a thick, heavy foundation. You can only imagine what that would feel like under the Egyptian sun. It would be hot, greasy, and would almost certainly clog your pores. It is a high-maintenance look, one that would require constant ray application and would be deeply impractical for anyone with work to do. But that is precisely the point. The impracticality is the message. It says, I am so wealthy, I can afford to be impractical. And here is where the danger creeps in again. Silently, the most effective, and therefore most desirable, skin lightening agent was sight. A white lead carbonate. It provided a smooth, opaque white coverage that was unmatched by natural clays. But, just like the galena in your kohl, it was a heavy metal. Applying a layer of lead-based foundation to your face day after day would be a direct route for the poison to be absorbed through your skin. Over time, it could lead to skin damage, hair loss, and severe internal organ damage. The very thing you were using to project an image of health and vitality was slowly, insidiously, undermining it. This creates a strange paradox. The tan was a sign of a healthy, outdoor life, yet the elite strive for a pale complexion that was achieved with toxic materials. Historians are still trying to unravel the full extent of lead poisoning in ancient Egypt. By studying the bones from mummies, they can measure the levels of lead accumulated over a lifetime. Some studies have found significantly high levels, particularly in the remains of women and children from wealthier classes, suggesting that their beauty routines were a major contributing factor. So, was the pale ideal worth the chronic headaches, the nerve damage, the slow, creeping illness? For the ancient Egyptians, the answer was likely a resounding yes. The social and cultural rewards of looking the part of appearing beautiful, high status, and divinely favored outweighed the invisible physical cost. You also learn about a stranger, less common practice. A quirky little beauty hack of the time was the use of crocodile dung. Yes, you heard that right. It would be collected, dried, and sometimes mixed with donkey milk to create a facial mask. The belief was that it had toning and lightening properties. It is one of those historical facts that sounds like a joke, but appears in some ancient texts. It is hard to imagine the smell, let alone the willingness to apply it to your face. Academics still debate whether this was a widespread practice or a bizarre and rare prescription, perhaps for a specific skin ailment. It certainly puts the lead-based foundation in a different perspective. When faced with the option of toxic metal or crocodile droppings, you can almost understand the choice. You thank the vendor and walk away from the stall, thinking about the layers of meaning on that woman's face. Her beauty was a complex tapestry woven from status, religion, and danger. Her pale skin was a statement of her place in the world, a testament to a life of privilege, but it was also, quite possibly, a death sentence, worn as casually as a linen dress. You touch your own cheek again, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, and for the first time, you appreciate its simple, uncomplicated honesty. You continue your walk, the heat of the afternoon beginning to build. A slight breeze rustles the palm trees, but it offers little relief. You run a hand over your head and feel the familiar, slightly rough stubble. It is almost time for a shave. Here, in the relentless Egyptian heat, having a full head of long hair is not just uncomfortable. It is a liability. It is a breeding ground for lice, a constant source of irritation, and an unbearable, sweat-soaked blanket on your neck. So, you, like almost everyone else you know, keep your natural hair either shaved completely or cropped extremely short. You see a group of men sitting outside a barber's shop. The shop is really just a designated patch of shade under an acacia tree. The barber, a man with nimble fingers and a serious expression, is using a small, curved bronze blade to shave a customer's head. The blade has to be kept meticulously sharp. A dull blade would be an instrument of torture, pulling and tearing at the skin. After he is done, he will rub the man's scalp with a soothing oil. Looking around, you see bald heads everywhere. They glisten in the sun, a testament to the Egyptian obsession with cleanliness, or WAB, which was next to guidelines. A shaved head was a clean head. It was pure. Priests and priestesses were required to shave their entire bodies every few days to be ritually pure enough to enter the sacred precincts of the temple. So, if everyone is bald, why do all the statues and tomb paintings show Egyptians with elaborate, beautiful hairstyles? You look towards a wealthy-looking man passing by in a litter carried by 4 strong servants. He is not bald. He has a magnificent head of thick, black, perfectly coiffed hair, arranged in neat, tight braids, but something about it looks too perfect. It sits on his head with a solid, sculptural quality. It does not move in the breeze. That is because it is not his hair. It is a wig. Wigs were the ultimate status symbol. They were the solution to the hair dilemma. How to be clean and cool while also looking fashionable and important. You shave your real hair for comfort and hygiene, and then you put on a wig for public appearances. It is the best of both worlds. You notice the variety. The man in the litter wears a complex, shoulder-length wig of hundreds of tiny braids. each one meticulously crafted. His wife, sitting beside him, wears an even more elaborate creation, a tripartite wig with 2 sections falling in front of her shoulders and a third, longer section falling down her back. It is decorated with small golden rings and faience beads. These wigs were not cheap. The finest ones were made from human hair, which had to be purchased or traded for. Poorer people might have wigs made from a blend of human hair and plant fibers, like palm leaf shreds or flecks, which were then coated in beeswax and resin to hold their shape and give them a dark, glossy finish. A truly high-quality wig could cost as much as a small plot of land. It was a serious investment, a piece of property you would care for, store on a special wig stand, and perhaps even be buried with. You can only imagine the sheer weight and heat of wearing one on a day like today. Putting a dense, heavy cap of hair, wax, and resin on your freshly shaved head would be like wearing a fur hat in a sauna. It must have been incredibly uncomfortable. But fashion and status have always demanded sacrifice. The discomfort was part of the point. It showed you could afford to endure it. It also protected your bald scalp from the sun, so it served a practical purpose as well. A strange, circular logic. You shave your head to stay cool, then wear a hot wig to protect your shaved head from the sun it is now exposed to. There is a fascinating and slightly morbid little detail that archaeologists have uncovered. They have found wigs that still had lice in them. It seems that even these expensive, artificial creations were not immune to the persistent pests. The owners would try to treat them, often by coating them in even more beeswax, which would essentially entomb the unlucky critters for eternity. Historians still debate whether the primary motivation for shaving was lice prevention or religious purity. It was likely a combination of both. The practical problem of pests and the religious ideal of cleanliness reinforced each other, making the bald head and wig combination the standard for millennia. You see a friend of yours, a woman who works weaving linen. She is wearing a much simpler wig, a short, bob-style cut made mostly of vegetable fiber. It is functional, keeping her head covered while she works, but it still signals her adherence to the proper look. She complains that the beeswax has started to get a bit soft in the sun, and she is worried a stray strand might get caught in her loom. You look at her wig, then at the nobleman's elaborate creation, and you understand. A wig was not just hair. It was a clear, visible indicator of your wealth, your social standing, and your profession. It was a hairstyle that you could literally put on and take off, transforming you from a simple, shorn-headed person into a sophisticated member of society. And as you walk home, you find yourself thinking, maybe it is time to start saving up for a simple wig of your own. Even a small one would be better than nothing. That evening, you receive an invitation. A local official, a man of some importance, is hosting a feast to celebrate a recent promotion. This is a significant event, an opportunity to see and be seen, to enjoy food and drink you would not normally have access to, and to participate in the sophisticated side of Egyptian life. Preparations are a flurry of activity. You bathe carefully, scrubbing your skin with a mixture of Natron's Ultant oil. You apply your kohl with extra care, making the lines sharp and delicate. You put on your best, cleanest linen tunic, and finally, you place your prized possession on your head, your wig. It is a modest one, but you have spent weeks trading for it. It is a simple, shoulder-length style made of flax fiber and coated in dark wax. It feels heavy and stiff, but it makes you feel instantly more formal, more ready for the occasion. You arrive at the official's villa as the sun is setting, casting a warm, orange glow over the whitewashed walls of his courtyard. Torches are lit, casting flickering shadows. The air is filled with the sound of a harp and a flute, and the scent of roasting meat and fragrant flowers. Servants move through the growing crowd, offering cups of wine and beer. It is a world away from your simple daily life. As you take a cup of wine, you notice something peculiar. Many of the wealthier guests, both men and women, have a strange, cone-shaped object sitting directly on top of their wigs. The cones are about the size of a small mango, and they appear to be made of a waxy, whitish substance. As the evening wears on and the heat from the torches and the press of bodies fills the courtyard, you see that these cones are slowly, almost imperceptibly, melting. A trickle of scented fat or wax runs down the sides of their wigs, over their shoulders, and onto their linen garments. That leaves a faint, glistening trail. At first, it seems bizarre. Why would anyone intentionally put something on their head that was designed to melt and stain their expensive wigs and clothes? This is the enigmatic perfume cone, one of the most curious and debated accessories in all of ancient Egyptian history. You watch, fascinated, as a woman near you laughs, tilting her head back. A drop of the perfumed grease runs down her neck, and she seems completely unbothered by it. In fact, she seems to enjoy it. The melting cone was a combination of an air freshener, a personal perfume, and a symbol, all in one. The cone itself was made of a solid, tallow-like substance, animal fat or beeswax that had been infused with fragrant resins and essences, most commonly myrrh, frankincense, or lotus flower. As it melted from the person's body, heating the ambient temperature of the party, it would release a continuous, pleasant aroma around them. In a crowded, hot room, this was a very desirable effect. You are, quite literally, the walking, human air freshener. The greasy residue was also believed to act as a kind of moisturizer for the skin and a conditioner for the wig, keeping it supple and shiny. The stains on the clothing, far from being a mess, they were a sign of luxury. They announced to everyone that you were wealthy enough to afford not only the perfume cone itself, but also the constant laundering of your fine linens. It was a conspicuous display of disposable wealth. For a very long time, historians were not sure if these cones were real objects. For decades, the only evidence for them came from paintings and reliefs on tomb walls. They are depicted in countless banquet scenes, always perched on the heads of guests, but no actual, physical perfume cone had ever been found. This led to a huge academic debate. Were they real, physical objects, or were they just a symbolic representation of something else? Perhaps they were a purely artistic convention, a symbol for the scent of perfume, or a representation of a person being anointed with sacred oil, a moment of divine favor. It was a genuine mystery. This all changed very recently. In 2019, archaeologists excavating at the site of Amarna made a groundbreaking discovery. They found the remains of two individuals, both buried with what appeared to be perfume cones still on their heads. They were collapsed and degraded after 300 years. Of course, but the waxy, shell-like structures were there. Analysis confirmed they were made of a form of biological wax. It was the first direct archaeological evidence that these cones were real objects that people actually wore. This discovery tipped the scales in the long-standing debate, suggesting that the tomb paintings were, in fact, depicting a real, if strange, fashion accessory. You look again at the guests with their melting headwear. It is still a strange sight. You can imagine the feeling of the sticky, scented grease running down your face and neck. But you also begin to understand the logic. In a culture that prized fragrance as a connection to the divine and a mark of cleanliness and status, the perfume cone was the ultimate expression of that ideal. It was an immersive, multi-sensory statement of luxury. As a servant offers you a lotus flower to hold and sniff, you feel a little underdressed without a cone of your own. You touch the top of your simple wig and make a mental note. If you ever get invited to a party like this again, you will need to find a way to get your hands on one of those strange, melting, fragrant cones. The feast is in full swing. You find a seat on a reed mat and a servant places a low table in front of you, laden with an incredible array of food: roasted duck, grilled fish from the Nile, piles of figs and dates, and soft, flat bread. It is a bounty you could only dream of. As you eat, you observe the people around you, particularly the hosts and their high status guests. You notice their figures, their posture, the way they carry themselves. There is an undeniable emphasis on a certain body type, an ideal that is reinforced everywhere you look, from the statues of gods to the paintings of nobles. The ideal is one of youth and slenderness. In Egyptian art, both men and women are almost always depicted with narrow hips, flat stomachs, long, elegant limbs, and a youthful, athletic build. The men have broad shoulders and muscular arms, while the women are shown with high, small breasts and a graceful, willowy frame. This is the perfect Egyptian body. Its peaks of vitality, health, and a kind of divine grace. Age and the natural changes it brings to the body are rarely shown. Even elderly figures in art are often just given the face of an older person on top of a young, idealized body. It is as if the culture collectively decided to ignore the physical realities of aging. You look down at your own body. You work hard, but your diet is mostly bread, beer, and whatever vegetables are in season. You are healthy, but you do not have the chiseled physique of the figures on the temple walls. You see the official's wife across the courtyard. She is beautiful and elegant, her linen dress so fine it is almost transparent, revealing the silhouette of her body beneath. She is slim, and she carries herself with a poise that emphasizes her slender form. This image of beauty creates a certain pressure. It is a standard to live up to, or at least aspire to. So, how did they achieve this? For the wealthy, diet was key. While you and your family subsist on a carb-heavy diet, the elite had access to a much wider variety of foods, including more lean proteins from meat, poultry, and fish, and a greater abundance of fruits and vegetables. They could afford to eat in a way that helped them maintain a slimmer figure. But it was not just about what they ate. It was also about how they were perceived. Their idealized depictions in art were a form of PR. A powerful man would commission a statue of himself with the body of a young athlete, not because he actually looked like that, but because that is how he wanted to be remembered for eternity. It was a projection of power and virility. But what about for ordinary people? Was there a concept of dieting? While there are no ancient Egyptian diet books, there are medical papier that discuss health and digestion. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest and most important medical documents, contains remedies for all sorts of ailments, including what we might call digestive issues. There are recipes for concoctions meant to expel the superfluities of the belly. Many of these are strong laxatives made from things like castor oil, berries, or figs. While their primary purpose was likely medical to treat constipation or other digestive complaints, it is not a huge leap to imagine people using them to feel lighter or to try and achieve a flatter stomach, especially after a large feast like this one. Herein lies a little-known tidbit. Ancient Egyptians may have been among the first people to associate a specific food with weight gain. Medical texts occasionally warn against eating too much of a certain type of sweet, sticky cake made with honey and dates, suggesting it could lead to an undesirable heaviness. This shows a conscious link between diet and body shape, a rudimentary understanding of calories, even if they did not have the scientific language for it. The obsession with slenderness is fascinating, but it also creates a stark contrast with the reality that archaeologists have uncovered. When scientists examine mummies, they get a very different picture. The skeletons on preserved tissues of many elite Egyptians, including some pharaohs, show that they were often overweight, and some were even obese. Pharaoh Hatshepsut, one of the most powerful women in Egyptian history, is believed to have been obese and suffered from diabetes. The high-carb diet of bread and beer, combined with the rich, fatty foods enjoyed by the upper classes, took its toll. Many mummies show evidence of clogged arteries, a condition known as atherosclerosis, which is linked to a rich diet and a sedentary lifestyle. So, there is a major disconnect between the art and the reality. The slim ideal was so powerful that it completely overrode the truth in all official representations. Historians are still debating why this was. Was it pure vanity? Or was it a deeper religious belief? Perhaps representing oneself as healthy and vigorous was essential for ensuring a successful journey into the afterlife. To be depicted as old, overweight, or infirm might have been to risk carrying those traits with you into eternity. So you commissioned art that showed you at your absolute best, a kind of permanent, magical airbrushing. You take another sip of wine and watch the dancers in the center of the courtyard. They are all young, slim, and energetic, their bodies moving with a fluid grace that perfectly embodies the cultural ideal. Their performance is a living, breathing version of the paintings on the tomb walls. It is beautiful, captivating, and a powerful reminder of the slender, youthful form that everyone here, in one way or another, is chasing. The feast continues late into the night. The wine flows freely. The music is enchanting, and the conversation is lively. You are enjoying yourself, but as you talk and laugh with the person next to you, a familiar anxiety creeps in. You become self-conscious about your breath. It is a chronic problem for almost everyone you know, a direct consequence of the Egyptian diet. You discreetly reach into a small pouch at your waist and pull out a tiny, hard pellet. You pop it into your mouth and begin to chew. Immediately, that powerful, spicy sweet flavor floods your senses. It is a mixture of myrrh, cinnamon, and frankincense, all bound together with honey and ground herbs like kasher or cardamom. These are some of the world's first breath mints, a clever and very necessary invention. The problem starts with the bread. Bread is the staple food, the foundation of every meal, but the way it is made is gritty. The wheat and barley are ground into flour using stone grinding slabs. In the process, tiny particles of sand and stone from the grinders get mixed into the flour. There is no way to avoid it. So, every loaf of bread, every pastry, every meal contains a fine abrasive. Over a lifetime, this has a devastating effect on your teeth. The constant grinding wears down the enamel, flattening the chewing surfaces of your molars and exposing the sensitive dentin and pulp underneath. This leads to widespread dental problems, painful abscesses, infections, and tooth loss. You have seen it in your own family. Your grandfather has almost no teeth left, and he is in constant, low-grade pain. Looking at the skulls of ancient Egyptians, archaeologists have confirmed this is one of the most common health issues they faced. The dental wear is often shocking, with teeth worn down to the gum line. even in relatively young adults. With so many infected and rotting teeth, chronic bad breath, halitosis was an epidemic. It was an unavoidable consequence of just staying alive, and in a society that placed such a high value on cleanliness, fragrance, and appearing pleasant in close company. This was a major social problem. You cannot exactly have a charming conversation with the vizier if you are worried about your breath. So, the Egyptians, ever resourceful, developed a solution. They used the powerful, aromatic resins and spices that were so central to their religious and cosmetic lids and turned them into oral hygiene products. You roll the pellet around in your mouth. The myrrh has a slightly bitter, medicinal taste, but it is a powerful antiseptic. The cinnamon and frankincense provide a warm, sweet fragrance that masks any underlying unpleasantness. The honey helps bind it all together and adds a touch of sweetness. It does not solve the root problem. Of course, your teeth are still being worn away with every meal, but it is an effective and expensive way to manage the symptoms. The key ingredients myrrh, frankincense, and good quality cinnamon were all imported luxury goods. They traveled long distances along trade routes from the land of Punt, likely modern-day Eritrea or Somalia, or across the Arabian Peninsula. This meant that high-quality breath mints, like so many other beauty aids, were a status symbol. The ability to afford a pleasant-smelling mouth was another way to distinguish yourself from the common laborer. Beyond these pellets, there were other, more rudimentary forms of dental care. Archaeologists have found evidence of early toothpicks. Small, pointed slivers of wood or bronze, used to clean between the teeth. There are also recipes in medical papier for remedies for the tooth. One such recipe calls for a powder made of ground barley, ochre, and honey to be applied to a painful tooth. It probably did not do much to cure an abscess, but the honey would have had some antibacterial properties, and packing the cavity might have provided some temporary relief from the pain. A particularly fascinating and debated topic among Egyptologists is the question of whether they practiced any form of advanced dentistry. For the most part, the answer seems to be no. They did not have fillings or perform complex extractions. If a tooth was bad, it was either left to fall out on its own, or it was pulled out with what must have been excruciating force. However, there are a few very rare examples of what looks like early dental brickwork. In a couple of discovered jabonets, loose teeth have been fastened to their more stable neighbors using loops of gold or silver wire. This raises a huge question. Was this a functional dental procedure performed during the person's life to help them eat? Or was it purely a cosmetic fix, done by the embalmers after death to ensure the deceased looked whole and presentable for their journey to the afterlife? The general consensus leans towards the latter. It was likely post-mortem cosmetic dentistry, ensuring you looked your best for Osiris. But the debate continues, as some argue the wear patterns on the wires suggest they were worn for some time during life. You subtly chew your breath mint, feeling more confident. The strong, pleasant taste is a small bubble of luxury, a temporary shield against a problem that is baked into the very bread you eat. It is another layer of the complex reality of life here. You strive for an image of perfection, perfect skin, perfect hair, a perfect figure, and pleasant breath, all while your body is quietly struggling against the environmental and dietary challenges of the land. It is a constant, daily battle between the ideal and the real, fat with kohl, wigs, and tiny, fragrant pellets of myrrh. As your breath mint dissolves, its fragrance mingles with the other scents filling the courtyard. The air is a rich tapestry of aromas. The sweet, heavy perfume of lotus flowers floating in bowls of water, the smoky, sacred scent of incense burning in a corner, the rich smell of the roasting meat, and the individual perfumes radiating from the guests and their melting cones. You close your eyes for a moment and just breathe it all in. Fragrance is not just a background element in this world. It is an active presence. It is a form of communication, a medium for emotion, and a bridge to the divine. Your attention is drawn to a small incense burner honest and near the host. A thin, steady stream of pale gray smoke spirals upwards, carrying a deep, woody, and slightly citrusy scent. It is frankincense, the precious resin from a far-off land. Watching the smoke ascend, you are reminded that this is not just for ambience. For the Egyptians, incense was the primary way to make an offering to the gods. The smoke carried the essence of the offering up to the heavens, delivering the prayers and praises of mortals to the divine realm. The Egyptian word for incense, senet-jer, literally translates to that which makes divine. To burn it was to sanctify a space, to make it pleasing to the gods. Every temple ritual began unended with the burning of incense. But perfume was not just for the gods. It was for people, too. To be clean was essential, but to be fragrant was to be truly civilized and blessed. The absence of a pleasant scent was seen as a sign of poverty or even moral failing. The perfumes you and your fellow guests are wearing are not the light, alcohol-based sprays of later eras. They are heavy, oil-based concoctions. The base was usually a plant oil, like moringa oil, bailanoes oil, or even castor oil. This oil would then be infused with a scent of flowers, woods, or resins through a complex and labor-intensive process. One of the most prized scents was the blue lotus flower. You see them everywhere tonight, floating in bowls, held in people's hands, and woven into garlands. The lotus was deeply symbolic. It closed its petals at night and sank below the water, only to re-emerge and bloom again in the morning, making it a powerful symbol of rebirth and regeneration, closely associated with the sun god Ra. But its scent was also considered intoxicating and almost magical. People would press their faces into the blooms, inhaling deeply. The Egyptians would infuse this scent into oil to create a highly sought-after perfume. You can imagine the process. Hundreds of lotus blossoms would be picked at dawn, their petals steeped in a vat of warm oil for days, the oil gently absorbing their delicate, sweet fragrance. The spent flowers would be strained out, then new ones added, over and over, until the oil was thoroughly saturated with the scent. It was an art form, and the master perfumers who created these scents were highly respected artisans. Their recipes were closely guarded secrets. The most famous and luxurious of all Egyptian perfumes was a blend known as KY5. It was a legendary concoction, renowned throughout the ancient world. The recipe varied, but it was incredibly complex, sometimes involving 16 or more ingredients. It typically included things like frankincense, myrrh, mastic, pine resin, cinnamon, cardamom, and cassia, all blended with wine, honey, and raisins. The ingredients would be ground, steeped, and boiled in a precise sequence, a process that could take weeks or even months. The resulting perfume was not a liquid, but a solid resin or paste, which could be burned as a sacred incense or blended with oil to be worn on the skin. It was said to have calming properties, to induce pleasant dreams, and to be so divine that even the gods themselves delighted in its aroma. Owning a small amount of KY5 would be like owning a precious jewel. But where did all these exotic ingredients come from? Myrrh and frankincense, the backbone of most sacred scents, did not grow in Egypt. They came from the Nile, scraggly trees that grew in the distant, semi-mythical land of Punt in southern Arabia. This trade was the lifeblood of the luxury economy. Pharaohs would launch massive expeditions, sending fleets of ships down the Red Sea on perilous journeys that could take years. They would bring back not just the resins themselves, but also live incense trees, which they would try, mostly unsuccessfully, to plant in Egyptian temple gardens. There is a fascinating, ongoing debate among historians and botanists about the exact nature of some of these perfume ingredients. The blue lotus, for example, is often identified as Nymphaea chiroea. Some scholars have proposed that this plant contains mild psychoactive alkaloids and that the Egyptians might have been aware of its narcotic effects, perhaps using it in religious rituals to achieve a trance-like state. This is highly controversial. Was inhaling the lotus scent just an aesthetic pleasure, or was it a form of ancient ritualistic drug use? The evidence is ambiguous. The art shows them sniffing the flowers with great intensity, but whether this was to get high or simply to enjoy a beautiful smell is a question that remains tantalizingly unanswered. You look around the perfumed courtyard, at the melting curtains, the smoking incense, the fragrant flowers. You realize that you are inside a carefully constructed sensory bubble. The fragrances are designed to transport you, to lift your spirits, to connect you to your companions and your gods. It is a language spoken without words, a declaration of wealth, piety, and sophistication. And as you inhale the complex blend of scents, you feel a sense of peace and belonging. You are part of this fragrant, magical world, at least for one night. You continue to observe the feast, your senses now keenly attuned to the layers of artifice and beauty around you. Your gaze falls upon a woman sitting near the harpist. She is clearly a person of high status. Her wig is immaculate. Her linen dress is of the finest quality, and her jewelry glints in the torchlight. But it is her eye makeup that catches your attention. It is different from the standard black kohl that you and most others are wearing. While she has the classic black line, she also has a vibrant splash of color on her eyelids, a shimmering, bold green. The green is a striking contrast to the dark kohl and her reddish-brown skin. It makes her eyes look luminous, otherworldly. This is the other half of the Egyptian eye makeup story. While black kohl was the everyday staple, green eye paint was its more exotic and, in some ways, more ancient cousin. You have seen it depicted in very old art, from the earliest dynasties. It was one of the very first cosmetics used in this land. The source of this brilliant green pigment was the mineral malachite. Just like the galena for kohl, malachite had to be mined, often from the same desert regions in the Sinai. It is a beautiful stone, a vibrant copper carbonate hydroxide that forms in swirling bands of bright and dark green. To make the eye paint, chunks of malachite would be painstakingly ground into a fine, smooth powder. This powder would then be mixed with an oil or fat to create a paste that could be applied to the eyelids. You imagined her earlier in the day, sitting before her polished bronze mirror, a servant carefully applying the green paste with a delicate ivory stick. The color was not just for beauty. Like everything else in Egyptian cosmetics, it was imbued with deep symbolic meaning. Green was the color of life, vegetation, and fertility. It was the color of the new crops that sprang up from the dark, fertile silt of the Nile after the annual flood. It was the color of regeneration and new beginnings. The great god Osiris, the lord of the underworld and rebirth, was often called the Great Green. By wearing green eyeshadow, you were invoking the power of renewal and vitality. You were aligning yourself with the life-giving forces of the universe. There was also a belief that the green eye paint had specific magical properties. It was thought to be particularly effective at promoting health and protecting the young. The goddess Hathor, the patron of love, beauty, and joy, was also known as the Lady of Malachite. Wearing her sacred color was a way to seek her favor and protection. Some ancient texts suggest that the green paint was believed to stimulate the mind and clear the vision, both literally and figuratively. But just like its black counterpart, this beautiful cosmetic concealed a hidden danger. Malachite is a copper ore. While not as notoriously toxic as lead, prolonged exposure to copper compounds can still be harmful. Absorbing copper through the delicate skin of the eyelids could lead to irritation and, over the long term, could potentially contribute to the body's toxic load. It was another case of beauty having a price, a slow and silent transaction of health for style. This leads to a little-known fact that highlights the Egyptians' meticulous nature. They did not just use one type of green. Archaeologists analyzing the contents of ancient cosmetic pots have found different recipes for green eye paint. Some were pure, high-quality ground malachite, which would have been very expensive. Others were cut with cheaper minerals, like different types of clay, to extend the pigment. And fascinatedly, some greens were not made from malachite at all, but from other copper-based minerals, suggesting regional variations or different workshops developing their own unique formulas. It was not a one-size-fits-all product. As you look at the woman's green eyelids, you also notice the shape. It is not just a smudge of color. It is applied in a stylized almond shape, just like the kohl. Sometimes, the green would be used on the eyelid itself, while the black kohl would be used to create the dramatic outline. Other times, the green was used on the eyebrow or underneath the eye. The combination of the two colors, black and green, was a powerful statement. It represented the two core concepts of Egyptian life. The black, fertile earth, Kemet, the name for Egypt itself, and the green, vibrant life that springs forth from it. Your whole worldview, painted in miniature around your eyes. There is an ongoing debate among Egyptologists about the timeline of these two colors. For a long time, it was believed that green eye paint was popular in the Old and Middle Kingdoms and was then largely replaced by black kohl in the New Kingdom, the period you are currently in. The theory was that fashion simply changed. However, more recent discoveries and analyses have complicated this simple narrative. While black kohl certainly became dominant, the use of green never completely disappeared, especially for ceremonial purposes or among the very wealthy who could afford to be a bit more flamboyant. The argument now is less about a complete replacement and more about a shift in emphasis. Was green seen as old-fashioned in your time? Or was it a classic look, a deliberate throwback to the time of the Great Pyramid builders, worn by those who wanted to project an aura of ancient authority and tradition? The answer is likely complex, a mix of fashion, status, and personal preference. The woman with the green eyeshadow turns her head, and the torchlight catches the color, making it flash for a second. It is undeniably beautiful. It is a spark of life, a splash of the Nile's promise, set against the dark, protective line of kohl. It is a testament to a culture that saw no contradiction in blending the beautiful with the symbolic, and the sacred with the dangerous. Your gaze drifts from the woman with the green eyeshadow to her companion, who is holding a small, flat object in her lap. It is her mirror. She lifts it to check her appearance, tilting it to catch the flickering torchlight. It is a beautiful thing, an object of status in its own right. The handle is carved from ivory into the shape of a papier stalk, and the reflecting part is a flat, circular disc of metal, polished to a high sheen. You watch as she purses her lips and subtly adjusts a stray strand of her wig. The image she sees, however, is not the crisp, perfect reflection you might imagine. You have one of these at home, a much simpler version with a plain wooden handle and a bronze disc. You know exactly what she is looking at. The reflection in a polished metal mirror is not like the glass mirrors of the future. It is a softer, warmer, and more forgiving image. The metal, whether it is copper, bronze, or for the super rich, silver, imparts a golden or silvery hue to everything it reflects. Your skin looks warmer, the colors of your clothes deeper. It is a world seen through a permanent, gentle filter, but it is also a world that is slightly distorted. No matter how perfectly the metal is polished, it is never a perfectly flat surface. There are always tiny imperfections, slight convex or concave curves that warp the reflection. Your nose might look a little wider, your eyes a little further apart. The image is also much dimmer than a glass mirror. To see yourself clearly, you need good light, which is why she is tilting it towards the torch. In the dim light of your own home, looking in your mirror can be a murky, mysterious affair. You see a ghostly version of yourself, a suggestion of a face rather than a precise portrait. This single object, this imperfect mirror, had a profound impact on the entire Egyptian concept of beauty. Think about it. Your only tool for self-appraisal gives you a softened, slightly warped, and dimly lit version of yourself. You never truly see your own face with objective clarity. You cannot obsess over every tiny pore, every fine line, every small imperfection, because you simply cannot see them. This technological limitation may have, ironically, been good for the collective self-esteem. The focus was on the overall impression, the silhouette, the shape. Does the kohl create the correct, bold almond shape? Does the wig sit correctly on the head? Is the overall effect pleasing? The fine details were left to the imagination, or to the warm, flattering interpretation of the bronze. This might be one reason why Egyptian art is so focused on idealized forms rather than realistic portraiture. The artists were painting an ideal, and the people viewing their own reflections were seeing a softened, idealized version of themselves. The art and the reality, mediated by the mirror, were not so far apart. The mirror itself was a potent symbol. The Egyptian word for mirror, then her, can be translated as life and the seeing of the face. The reflecting disc was associated with the sun, the ultimate source of lightened life. Because of this, mirrors were seen as having magical properties. They could reveal truth, and they were often used in divination rituals. Gazing into a mirror was not just an act of vanity, it was an act of contemplation, a way of looking at your own soul, or ka. The handles of these mirrors were often works of art, imbued with their own symbolism. Many, like the one you see at the feast, are shaped like a papyrus stalk, a symbol of life and vitality. Others feature the head of the goddess Hathor, who, in addition to being the goddess of love and beauty, was also the patroness of mirrors. A very common design for the handle was a stylized figure of a young, nude woman, her arms raised to support the solar disk of the mirror. This directly linked the female form, beauty, and the life-giving power of the sun. Owning such an object was a constant reminder of the connection between the human and the divine. There is, however, an ongoing scholarly discussion about the true quality of these reflections. Traditional thought holds that the images were always blurry and distorted. However, some experimental archaeology Well, researchers have tried to replicate ancient Egyptian mirrors using their techniques and materials. Has challenged this. A team of metallurgisters and Egyptologists managed to create a copper-tin bronze mirror that, when polished with fine abrasive sand and oil for many hours, produced a surprisingly clear, sharp image. This raises a new question. Were the dim, blurry reflections a result of the technology's limitations, or simply a result of the mirrors we have found being 3,000 years old and corroded? Perhaps a brand new, perfectly polished mirror in ancient times gave a much better reflection than we give them credit for. The debate highlights how much we still have to learn about the daily sensory experiences of the past. A quirky little side note is how these mirrors were cared for. To protect the polished surface from scratches and tarnishing, they were kept in special cloth bags. You have one for your mirror at home. It is a simple linen pouch, but the wealthy had bags that were eyed and embroidered. The mirror was a precious tool, and you treated it with care. You would never just toss it on a table. The woman at the feast finishes her self-inspection. She smiles, satisfied with the soft-focused goddess staring back at her from the golden disc. She slips the mirror back into its protective case. Her sense of self, her standard of beauty, has been shaped and affirmed by this small, magical, and deeply deceptive object. It showed her not just what she looked like, but what she was supposed to look like. A warm, glowing, and slightly perfected version of herself, ready for eternity. The feast begins to wind down. The music softens, and the energy in the courtyard becomes more relaxed and conversational. You notice the hands of the woman with the elegant mirror. As she reaches for a fig from a nearby platter, you see that her fingertips are stained a deep reddish brown. Her fingernails and the skin around them are colored, as if she has dipped them in dye. The color is rich and earthy, as dark in deliberate contrast her pale linen dress and her light-toned skin. This is not a sign of manual labor. It is a deliberate and ancient form of decoration. It is henna. You look down at your own hands. Your nails are clean but plain. You have seen this practice many times, on both women and men. It is a much more democratic form of adornment than expensive wigs or imported kohl. The henna plant, Was onia inermis, grows in Egypt and other hot, dry climates. It is a shrub whose leaves, when dried and crushed into a powder and mixed with a slightly acidic liquid like lemon juice, release a potent dye molecule. This paste, when applied to skin, hair, or nails, leaves a long-lasting stain that can range from orange to a deep mahogany brown. This is one of the safest and most harmless of all the Egyptian beauty practices you have encountered. Unlike the lead in your kohl or the copper in your eyeshadow, henna is a plant-based dye with no known toxic side effects. It is beauty without the danger. A simple and natural way to decorate your body. The process is both an art and a social ritual. Women often gather to apply it, mixing the fragrant, earthy-smelling paste and painting it onto each other's hands and feet. You imagine the woman at the feast going through this process. She would have had the thick, greenish-brown paste slathered onto her fingernails, her toenails, and perhaps the soles of her feet and the palms of her hands. The paste then needs to sit on the skin for several hours to allow the dye to penetrate the top layers of the epidermis. The longer you leave it on, the darker and more long-lasting the stain will be. After it has dried and cracked, you flake it off, revealing the bright orange stain underneath, which then darkens over the next day or two to its final, rich brown color. The effect is striking. It draws attention to the hands and feet, accentuating their movements. For a dancer, henna-ed feet would make their steps more visually captivating. For a woman of leisure, perfectly manicured, and henna-ed hands signaled that she did not need to perform manual labor that would chip or wear away the stain. It was a sign of elegance and a life of ease. But it was not just for the living. The use of henna was deeply connected to the afterlife. Archaeologists have examined numerous mummies and found clear evidence of henna staining on their nails, hair, and even skin. The great pharaoh Ramesses II, one of the most powerful rulers in Egyptian history, was found to have his fingertips and toes stained with henna when his mummy was unwrapped. This was not just a cosmetic touch-up by the embalmers. The henna was applied with the belief that it would bestow vitality and regenerative power upon the deceased in the afterlife, just as henna brought color and life to the skin of the living. It was thought to magically imbue the body of the dead with the life force needed for rebirth. There is a fascinating and slightly quirky detail about henna that historians have noted. While the primary use was for staining skin and nails, it was also one of the world's first hair dyes. People, especially as they aged, would use henna to cover their gray hairs. It would turn them bright, fiery, or in dread. Looking at the hair of some mummies, scientists can tell if the person dyed their hair in life. They can see the gray roots growing out from the scalp, with the rest of the hair shaft stained a vibrant reddish color by henna. It is a touchingly human detail, a sign that the desire to appear youthful and vibrant is an ancient one. A debate still exists among scholars regarding the full extent of henna's ritualistic use. Was it purely cosmetic and funerary, or did it have a role in other life cycle events, like marriages or births, as it does in many cultures today? The textual evidence from ancient Egypt is surprisingly sparse on this point. While the archaeological evidence on mummies is clear, the papyri do not talk much about henna parties or wedding rituals involving the dye. Some historians argue that this silence does not mean it did not happen. It just means it was such a common, domestic practice that the male scribes who wrote most of the official documents did not consider it important enough to record. Others suggest its use might have been more restricted than we assume. The true social context of henna application remains a partially unsolved puzzle. You watch the woman for a moment longer. The deep, earthy reed of her nails against the pale ivory of a wine cup is a small, perfect image of Egyptian aesthetics. It is a blend of the natural and the artificial, the simple and the sophisticated. It is a reminder that not every quest for beauty in this ancient land was fraught with peril. Some of it was as simple, as safe, and as timeless as painting your skin with the crushed leaves of a humble shrub, a tradition that would outlast the pharaohs, the pyramids, and the gods themselves. The party is now a quiet murmur. Guests are beginning to take their leave, their goodbyes soft in the cooling night air. As you watch the host bid farewell to the official's wife, the woman with the green eyeshadow and henna-stained fingers, you witness a small, subtle interaction that speaks volumes. The host bows slightly lower to her than he does to a less adorned guest. His deference is palpable. Her entire presentation, from her perfectly coiffed wig to her scented skin, commands a specific kind of respect. It is a powerful, non-verbal assertion of her husband's and, by extension, her own place in the world. This is when the full weight of the beauty standard dawns on you. It is not just a personal choice. It is not just about feeling good or protecting yourself from the sun. It is an oppressive, all-encompassing social pressure. Your appearance is a constant, public negotiation of your status. Every morning, when you apply your kohl, you are not just putting on makeup. You are putting on your social rank for all to see. Think about the resources involved. The kohl comes from distant mines. The fine linen of your best tunic requires immense labor to produce. The wig on your head is a significant financial investment. The perfume you might wear is made from ingredients that have traveled across deserts and seas. To be beautiful in the Egyptian way is to be wealthy. The more elaborate your appearance, the more loudly you proclaim your access to resources, leisure, and power. A simple farmer's wife, her face lined with homemade kohl and her hair simply covered with a cloth, is immediately invisibly identifiable as lower class when standing next to a noble woman in a tripartite wig and a dress of whisper-thin linen. This pressure creates a constant state of anxiety. Are you doing enough? Is your kohl line straight enough? Is your wig fashionable? Or does it look dated? You can imagine the subtle judgments being passed in a crowd like the one at this feast. A sideways glance at a wig that is slightly askew. A faint trinkle of the nose at someone whose perfume is not as refined. These small signals reinforce the hierarchy every single moment. Your body and your face become a canvas upon which your social value is painted, and you are both the artist and the subject. Under constant scrutiny, this pressure extends even into the realm of employment and opportunity. Consider a scribe looking for a patron, or a craftsman seeking a commission from a wealthy household. Arriving for an audience looking unkempt without kohl, with a shabby wig or none at all would be unthinkable. It would signal a lack of self-respect and, by extension, a lack of respect for the potential patron. It would suggest you are not a serious person. Your ability to present yourself according to the accepted standards of beauty and grooming could directly impact your livelihood. And what about those who could not, or would not, conform? The historical record, written by the elite, is largely silent about them, but you can imagine their existence. The person with a skin condition that made wearing makeup painful. The person whose religious beliefs, perhaps belonging to a foreign cult, forbade such adornments. The person who simply could not afford even the most basic kohl. They would have existed on the margins of society, their appearance marking them as outsiders. There is a fascinating ongoing debate among sociologists and Egyptologists about the agency of women within this system. On one hand, the beauty standards were clearly defined by a patriarchal power structure and were used to signal the status of a woman's father or husband. A beautiful, well-adorned wife was a reflection of a man's success. But, on the other hand, the cosmetic arts were a domain largely controlled by women. The mixing of pigments, the application of makeup, the styling of wigs, these were female-centric rituals. Did women use this as a source of power? Could a woman, through her masterful application of cosmetics and her careful cultivation of a fashionable appearance, improve her own social standing or wield influence in ways that were not available to her through official channels? Some scholars argue yes, that the beauty regimen was a tool that women could actively use to negotiate their position in the world. Others argue that this is a modern interpretation, and that for an ancient Egyptian woman, it was less about empowerment and more about fulfilling a prescribed role. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle, a complex dance of compliance and subtle manipulation. A strange, little-known fact is that cosmetic tools themselves could be a source of legal contention. There are records of divorce settlements from the village of Deir el-Medina, where the tomb builders lived, that list cosmetic items. The kohl pot, the mirror, or a special cosmetic spoon could be considered valuable personal property, to be divided and allocated just like a donkey or a piece of furniture. This shows how integral these items were to a person's identity and worth. Losing your mirror in a divorce was not just losing a tool. It was losing a piece of your status. As you prepare to leave the party, you feel the weight of your own simple wig on your head. You are acutely aware of how you must look to the other guests. You hope you appear respectable, that you have done enough to fit in. The pressure is exhausting. It is a performance that never ends. a game where the rules are unspoken but universally understood, and where the stakes are nothing less than your place in the world. The pursuit of beauty here is not a hobby. It is a full-time job. You walk home under a brilliant, star-filled sky. The cool night air is a welcome relief after the perfumed heat of the party. When you finally reach your house, the first thing you want to do is wash away the night. You are tired. The kohl around your eyes feels heavy, and the wig, which felt so formal and important hours ago, is now just a hot, itchy weight on your head. You long to be clean. This desire for cleanliness, for double UAB, is one of the most powerful driving forces in Egyptian culture, and it goes far beyond simple hygiene. It is a state of being, a ritual and moral purity that is essential for interacting with the sacred. You begin your own, more humble version of the purification rituals that a priest would undergo. First, you carefully lift off your wig and place it on its terracotta stand. The feeling of the cool air on your shaved scalp is one of the day's great reliefs. Next, you need to wash. If you were wealthy, you might have a designated bathing slab in your home, a raised stone platform where a servant would pour water over you. But for you, it is a simpler affair. You take a clay basin filled with water brought from the Nile earlier in the day. The water is precious, and you use it sparingly. There is no soap as we know it. Your soap is a scouring block made of natron, a naturally occurring mixture of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate that is harvested from dry lake beds. It is the same substance used in the mummification process to dry out the body, a fact you try not to dwell on. You mix the granular natron with a little oil to form a pasty scrub. It is abrasive and harsh on the skin, but it is effective at cutting through the grime, sweat, and oils of the day. You scrub your face, carefully working away the dark lines of kohl. Removing the lead-based makeup is a nightly ritual, a small act of cleansing yourself of the day's beautiful poison. You wash your body, feeling the grit of the natron scrub away the dust of the streets. The feeling of being truly clean is a profound pleasure, a restoration of order. But the obsession with purity does not stop at washing. It extends to body hair, while you keep your head shaved for comfort and to wear wigs. Most other body hair is also considered impure. Priests, as you know, shave their entire bodies every 3 days to be worthy of entering a temple. For the general population, especially for women, smooth, hairless skin is the ideal. It is seen as youthful, clean, and civilized. So, how do you get rid of it? Shaving with a bronze razor is one option, but it can be difficult on curved areas of the body and can leave a rough stubble. A more common method is a form of ancient waxing or sugaring. They is sticky. Thick paste would be made from a mixture of honey and sugar, or sometimes a heated resin. This paste would be applied to the skin, allowed to cool and harden slightly, and then ripped off, pulling the hair out with it. You can only imagine how painful that must have been. A sharp, stinging price for smooth skin. Tweezers, made from 2 hammered strips of bronze, were also used for plucking individual stray hairs. This is where you encounter one of the more peculiar and debated aspects of Egyptian hygiene: the use of depilatory creams. Some ancient texts contain recipes for creams that were believed to remove hair. A famous recipe from the Ebers Papiers gives the following instructions: to remove hair from any part of the body: burnt lotus leaf, tortoise shell, and hippo fat, mix together and apply. It sounds more like a magical potion than a functional cosmetic. Did it actually work? Modern science would say it is highly unlikely that this concoction could chemically dissolve hair. This leads to a debate among historians. Was this recipe pure magic? A placebo? that people believed would work? Or is there a piece of the puzzle we are missing? Some have speculated that the burnt lotus leaf might create a form of lye or alkali, which could have a depilatory effect. But this is a stretch. It is more likely that these creams were intended to be rubbed on vigorously, and it was the abrasive action, not the ingredients themselves, that removed the hair. Or perhaps they were simply ineffective, a testament to the desperation for a painless hair removal solution. It remains an unresolved question, a glimpse into a world where science, magic, and wishful thinking were all mixed together. Your own cleansing ritual is now complete. Your skin feels raw but clean. You are back to your natural state, bald, bare-faced, and unadorned. It is a state of privacy and simplicity, a stark contrast to the public persona you presented at the feast. You are no longer a walking symbol of status and belief. You are just you. This daily transformation, from the highly decorated public self to the simple, clean private self, is a fundamental rhythm of Egyptian life. It is a cycle of applying and removing layers of identity. The process of purification is not just about getting clean. It is about resetting, about stripping away the complexities of the social world to return to a state of simple, personal purity, ready for sleep and the dreams that might connect you to the other world. You lie down on your reed mat, the scent of the natron still faint on your skin, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. You are clean. You are pure. You are ready for rest. You lie on your sleeping mat, the quiet of the night enveloping your small home. The excitement of the feast has faded, replaced by a deep-seated weariness. But it is more than just the pleasant fatigue after a long day. A dull, persistent headache throbs behind your eyes, a familiar and unwelcome companion. You rub your temples, but it does little to ease the pressure. You also feel a strange, metallic taste in your mouth, a flavor you cannot quite place, and a general sense of lassitude, a heaviness in your limbs that sleep does not seem to cure. You dismiss it as you always do. The heat, the sun, the hard work, it is just life. Everyone feels this way sometimes. You have been feeling it more often lately, but you push the thought away. What you do not know, what you cannot possibly know, is that these are not just random aches and pains. They are the first, insidious whispers of a slow poisoning. They are the early symptoms of chronic lead exposure. Every morning for years, you have carefully lined your eyes with kohl made from galena, lead sulfide. When you attended the feast, you may have used a special, lighter colored foundation on your face, a pigment derived from ceracite, lead carbonate. The lead from these cosmetics, applied directly to the thin, absorbent skin around your eyes and on your face, has been steadily, silently seeping into your bloodstream. It does not happen all at once. It is a gradual accumulation, a toxic savings account building up in your bones, your blood, and your organs. The headache is a classic sign of lead's effect on the nervous system. The metallic taste in your mouth is another. The profound fatigue, the feeling that your muscles are made of stone, is your body struggling to cope with the interference in its basic cellular functions. Lead mimics other essential metals like calcium and iron, tricking your body into letting it into places it does not belong. It disrupts the production of heme, the molecule that helps carry oxygen in your blood, leading to a form of anemia that causes weakness and pallor. It damages the delicate connections between nerve cells, leading to neurological symptoms that can start with headaches and irritability and, over time, progress to memory loss, nerve damage, and even seizures. You see these symptoms in others, though no one connects them to the beautiful pots of makeup sitting on their shelves. You think of your neighbor, A woman a few years older than you, who often complains of sharp, unexplained pains in her stomach and joints. Her husband says she has become irritable and quick to anger, not like she used to be. It is early onset plummeism, or lead poisoning, but you would have no name for it. You would likely attribute it to a curse from a jealous rival, or the displeasure of a minor god. You might seek a remedy from a temple priest, an amulet, or a magical incantation. The true culprit, the silent poison in your makeup, would remain invisible. A strange and sad little detail that modern science has revealed is lead's devastating effect on children in pregnancy. If you were a woman of childbearing age, the lead stored in your bones could be mobilized during pregnancy and passed directly to your developing fetus, leading to miscarriages, stillbirths, or low birth weight. Children are especially vulnerable. The lead they absorb from their mothers or from the kohl applied to their own eyes can severely impact their developing brains, leading to learning disabilities and behavioral problems. Some historians have speculated that the high infant mortality rates in ancient Egypt and the prevalence of what might have been developmental disorders could be partly linked to this widespread, unintentional poisoning of the population through their cosmetics. This leads to a somber and highly debated question. Did the Egyptians have any inkling that their cosmetics were harmful? The papyrus and other medical texts describe symptoms that are strikingly similar to those of lead poisoning. They talk about colic, paralysis, and diseases of the head and brain. They even contain some recipes for remedies that involve lead compounds, believing them to have healing properties. This suggests a complete lack of understanding of its toxicity. They saw lead as a powerful substance, useful for pigments and perhaps even medicine. But they did not make the connection between the substance and the sickness. However, a minority of scholars argue that it is hard to believe a society of such keen observers could have completely missed the link. Is it possible that some physicians or priests did notice that people who worked extensively with lead, like miners or glaziers, tended to fall ill? Could it be that the knowledge was there, but it was a guarded secret, or simply ignored because the cultural and religious importance of the cosmetics was too great to overcome? This is highly speculative, and the mainstream view is that they were really unaware of the long-term dangers. They were, in essence, slowly killing themselves in the pursuit of beauty and divine protection, with no idea that the two were so tragically intertwined. You shift on your mat, the headache unabated. You think of the beautiful, dark line of kohl you will draw around your eyes in the morning. You think of it as a shield, a mark of civilization, a connection to the gods. It feels essential, as much a part of you as your own name. The thought of going without it is unthinkable, and so the cycle will continue. The daily ritual of beautification is also a daily ritual of poisoning. You close your eyes, trying to will the headache away, completely unaware that the very source of your identity and protection is also the source of your slow, creeping decline. You finally drift into a fitful sleep, your dreams filled with fragmented images from the feast. In one of these dream flashes, you see a close-up of the official's wife's eye, perfectly outlined in black and green. But in the dream, the eye seems to detach from her face and float in the darkness. A single, powerful, stylized symbol. It is an image you have seen 1,000 times, carved on temple walls, painted on coffins, and worn as an amulet around the necks of your neighbors. It is the Wajed eye, the eye of Horus. You wake with a start, the image still vivid in your mind. This is the true, deep magic behind your daily kohl ritual. You are not just drawing a pretty shape. You are painting a sacred, protective symbol directly onto your body. The distinctive almond shape with the long, trailing lines is a direct, conscious imitation of this divine eye. It is a personal amulet of immense power, and its story is one of the foundational myths of your culture. The story, as the priests tell it, is one of conflict and restoration. The god Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris, battled his uncle Set for the throne of Egypt. Set was a god of chaos and violence, and in one of their epic confrontations, he violently tore out Horus's left eye. The eye was shattered into pieces. In another version of the myth, Set merely damages it. In either case, the eye is wounded and lost. But the magic of the gods is powerful. Thoth, the god of wisdom and magic, painstakingly found the pieces and reassembled the eye, healing it with his divine power and restoring it to Horus. Because it was healed and made whole again, the restored Wadjet eye became a potent symbol of healing, restoration, protection, and wholeness. Each part of the stylized eye symbol you draw corresponds to a specific fraction in the Egyptian measurement system, representing one of the pieces that Thoth reassembled. The curving line that extends from the back of the eye, for example, represents 1/2. The pupil is 1/4. The eyebrow above is 1/8, and so on, down to 1/64. When you add all the fractions together, they total 63/64. They do not quite make a whole number. This missing 1/64 is a subject of much debate among Egyptologists. What does it represent? Some say it represents the magic that Thoth used to bind the pieces back together, a force that is uncontrovertible. Others believe it symbolizes the inherent imperfection of the physical world, a nod to the idea that true wholeness can only be achieved in the divine realm. It is one of those beautiful little mathematical and philosophical puzzles that the ancient Egyptians seemed to love. So, when you apply your kohl, you are performing a magical act. You are invoking the power of the healed eye of Horus to watch over you. You believe it will protect you from the evil eye, the malicious gaze of a jealous person, which was thought to be able to cause illness, misfortune, or even death. The Wadjet eye on your face acts as a shield, deflecting this negative energy. It is also believed to protect you from physical ailments, particularly eye diseases like trachoma, which were rampant, as we have discussed. This belief had a coincidental basis in reality due to the antibacterial properties of the lead compounds, a perfect example of magic and medicine being seen as the same thing. This belief is so pervasive that the Wadjet eye amulet is one of the most common objects found in archaeological digs. People of all classes wore them. They were carved from semi-precious stones like lapis lazuli and carnelian, or mass-produced from faience, a type of glazed ceramic. For the common people, you probably have one in your own home. The small, blue-green faience charm tucked away for good luck. To paint the symbol on your face is to take it a step further, to merge the amulet's power with your own body. A fascinating, lesser-known detail is the distinction between the right and left eyes. The right eye of Horus was associated with the sun and the god Ra, representing masculine power, light, and the active principle. The left eye, the one that was torn out and restored, was associated with the moon and the god Thoth, representing feminine power, magic, healing, and the passive, reflective principle. So, technically, the Wadjet eye you are emulating with your makeup is the left lunar eye, the one that holds the story of destruction and magical rebirth. Scholars are still debating the full psychological impact of this practice. What does it do to a culture when one of its primary forms of self-expression is the daily replication of a divine symbol of healing? Does it create a sense of collective security? Does it foster a mindset where protection is seen as an external, magical force rather than a result of personal action. It likely did both. It provided a powerful sense of comforting identity, a feeling of being watched over by the gods, but it may also have created a kind of magical dependency, where the proper application of the symbol was seen as more important than, say, washing your hands before eating. You get up from your mat and look at your reflection in the polished bronze mirror, which is now catching the first faint light of dawn. Your face is bare. You feel vulnerable, incomplete. The memory of the floating wood Jedi from your dream comes back to you. It is time. It is time to perform the ritual. It is time to invoke the power of Horus, to become whole again, to put on the magical shield that will allow you to face the day, its dangers, and its glare, both physical and metaphysical. A few weeks after the feast, a somber mood settles over your community. The old official, your host, has passed away. His journey into the afterlife, the most important journey of his existence, has begun. The preparations for his burial are elaborate and meticulously planned. A final, public testament to his status and wealth. You watch from a respectful distance as the funeral procession makes its way towards his newly completed tomb on the west bank of the Nile, the traditional land of the dead. The air is filled with the sound of ritual wailing and the chanting of priests, as you observe the funerary goods being carried into the tomb furniture. Jars of food and wine, statues of servants. You notice one item in particular. It is a small, exquisitely crafted wooden box, inlaid with ivory and ebony. You know exactly what it is. It is his cosmetic chest. Inside that box, lovingly arranged, will be all the tools for maintaining his appearance in the next world. Alabaster pots filled with fresh kohl and green eye paint, a bronze razor, tweezers, a polished silver mirror, and several applicators carved from bone. Even in death, beauty is not left behind. In fact, it becomes more important than ever. The Egyptian conception of the afterlife is not one of a wispy, ethereal spirit world. They envisioned a physical existence, a kind of idealized version of life on the Nile. The deceased spirit, or Ba, would need to be able to recognize its own body, or cut, in order to be reunited with it each night. This is why mummification was so crucial to preserve the body as a permanent home for the spirit, that it was also why the deceased had to look like themselves. A well-preserved but unadorned body was incomplete, the final stage of the mummification process. After the body was dried and wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen bandages, was the beautification. The emblem priests, acting as sacred cosmetologists, would paint a face onto the linen-wrapped head. They would use kohl to draw the large, luminous, almond-shaped eyes of a god. They might add eyebrows and a small smile. The goal was to create an idealized, eternal face for the deceased. Sometimes, a beautiful funerary mask, made of cartonnage or even solid gold for a pharaoh, would be placed over the head, presenting a perfect, unchanging face to the gods. Inside the coffin, the body was being prepared for its great judgment before the god Osiris, to enter the blessed field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. You had to be judged true of voice, your heart pure, but there was an implicit understanding that you also had to be presentable. To appear before the great gods looking unkempt would be a sign of profound disrespect. Your makeup was part of your ticket to paradise. The kohl not only allowed your spirit to see in the darkness of the tomb, but also protected you from any malevolent spirits you might encounter on your journey through the underworld. This is why the cosmetic kit was such an essential piece of grave furniture. The deceased would need it to reapply their makeup every day in the afterlife, just as they did in life. You imagine the old official, now residing in the field of reeds, waking up in the eternal dawn, tending to his magical crops, and then sitting down to apply his kohl before a day of feasting and pleasure. It was a continuation of the daily ritual, a thread of normalcy woven into the fabric of eternity. A fascinating and slightly macabre detail is the presence of replacement heads or reserve heads found in some Old Kingdom tombs. These are incredibly realistic limestone sculptures of the deceased's head, buried in the tomb but separate from the coffin. There is a long-standing academic debate about their purpose. The leading theory is that they were a magical backup. If the actual mummified head were to be damaged or destroyed, the spirit would have this perfect, permanent stone head to return to. It was an insurance policy for eternal identity. It highlights the extreme anxiety surrounding the preservation of one's individual appearance for the afterlife. This eternal beauty standard was not just for the elite. While a poor farmer could not afford a golden mask or an inlaid cosmetic box, they still made sure to provide for the beautification of their dead. A simple clay pot with a bit of kohl, a crude wooden applicator, and perhaps a small, roughly polished piece of bronze for a mirror would be placed in the grave. Every Egyptian, regardless of class, was sent on their final journey with the basic tools needed to look their best for the gods. There is a scholarly argument about whether the makeup in the tombs was purely for the deceased's use, or if it also served as an offering to the gods, particularly Hathor, the goddess of beauty. By placing these beautiful, unvaluable objects in the tomb, were you also making a gift to the divine, hoping to curry favor? It was likely both. The objects served a practical purpose for the deceased spirit while also acting as a testament to their piety and their devotion to the cosmic order. You watch as the last of the grave goods disappear into the darkness of the tomb entrance, which will soon be sealed for millennia. The cosmetic box is in there, waiting. It is a profound statement. Beauty in your world is not a fleeting, mortal concern. It is a timeless, essential quality, as necessary for successful existence after death as it is for successful life on earth. It is the bridge between the two worlds, a language of dignity and worth that both humans and gods can understand. A few years pass. Life along the Nile continues its timeless cycle of flood, planting, and harvest. Your own life has changed. You have married. You have children of your own. Your daily routines are much the same, but your perspective has shifted. You now see the world through the eyes of a parent, responsible for passing on the traditions and protections to the next generation. One day, you hear news that a team of workers, expanding the necropolis, has accidentally broken into a previously unknown, much older tomb. It is not the grand tomb of a pharaoh, but a modest burial of a middle-class family from centuries ago. The priests are called to perform the proper rites to appease the disturbed spirits. But for a short time, the contents of the tomb are visible, a window into a forgotten past. Curiosity gets the better of you, and you join a small, hushed crowd that has gathered at a safe distance. The workers bring out the skeletal remains, carefully placing them on a linen sheet, and for the first time in your life, you see the unvarnished, biological truth of your ancestors. It is a jarring experience. You are used to seeing the human form in two ways: as the living, breathing, cosmetically enhanced people around you, or as the idealized, perfect figures in art. This is something entirely different. This is the raw data of a human life. The first thing that strikes you is the height. The skeleton looks surprisingly short. The elegant, Long-limbed figures in the paintings are an artistic exaggeration. The reality was that most Egyptians, sustained by a diet heavy in bread and beer, were relatively short and stocky. You look at the skull, the teeth, just as you would expect, are worn flat. Some of them clearly obsessed, with damage to the jawbone from chronic infection. This person, you realize, lived with constant dental pain. An old priest, who has some knowledge of healing and anatomy, points to the vertebrae of the spine. He shows how they are compressed and lipped with excess bone growth, a clear sign of a life of hard physical labor, of carrying heavy loads. This was not the graceful, upright posture of the statues. This was the body of someone who worked. He then points to the long bones of the legs. There are faint, horizontal lines visible on them, what the priests call growth arrest lines. He explains that these lines form when a child suffers from a period of severe malnutrition or illness. Their growth temporarily stops, leaving a permanent marker on their bones. This person, as a child, had clearly survived times of famine or disease. It is a biography written in bone, and it is completely at odds with the official art you have seen your entire life. There are no paintings of people with bad teeth or stooped shoulders. There are no statues of individuals who are short or show the physical toll of a lifetime of work. The art is a lie. They beautiful, powerful, and necessary lie. Perhaps, but a lie nonetheless. This chasm between the artistic ideal and the archaeological reality is a subject of intense fascination for modern Egyptologists. By using X-rays and CT scans on mummies, they have been able to create a detailed picture of the health of ancient Egyptians, and it confirms what you are seeing with your own eyes. They have found evidence of widespread parasitic infections, likely from the Nile's water. They have found high rates of infant mortality and a life expectancy that, for the average person, was probably only around 30 to 35 years. They have found evidence of broken bones that healed poorly, and debilitating arthritis, even in the mummies of pharaohs. King Tutankhamun himself had a clubfoot and suffered from bone disease, and likely malaria. He was not the golden, perfect boy king depicted on his famous mask. He was a frail young man who probably walked with a cane. A particularly quirky and debated finding relates to body fat. While art depicts everyone as slender, analysis of the soft tissues of mummies has shown, as we have touched on, that many of the elite were overweight. So how did the embalmers handle this? Did they try to make the body conform to the ideal? There is some evidence to suggest they did. In some mummies, it appears the embalmers may have removed subcutaneous fat deposits during the mummification process, or used extra tight bandaging to create a more slender silhouette. This would be a form of post-mortem cosmetic surgery, the ultimate commitment to the beautiful eye. Whether this was a standard practice or an occasional one is still a matter of debate. You look from the skeleton back to the tomb it came from. The walls inside are painted with scenes from the deceased's life, or rather, their ideal life. The man is shown tall and strong, overseeing his farm. His wife is slender and beautiful, her wig perfect, her hands gracefully holding a lotus flower. The reality lying on the linen sheet tells a different, harder story. This moment is a profound, private revelation for you. You realize that the beauty standards you and everyone else strive for are not just an enhancement of reality. They are a rejection of it. They are a collective agreement to ignore the frailties, the pain, and the sheer difficulty of mortal life in favor of a vision of eternal, youthful perfection. You look at your own hands, seeing the calluses from your work. You think of your own aches and pains. You are part of the reality, not the ideal. And yet, Tomorrow, you will still apply your kohl. You will still strive for the ideal, because the ideal is what gives you hope. It is the promise that in the next life, you will not be the skeleton on the sheet, but the beautiful figure on the wall, perfect and whole for all eternity. You walk home from that unsettling scene at the old tomb, your mind grappling with the contrast between the perfect image and the imperfect reality. As you enter your home, you are greeted by the sound of your young son laughing. He is playing on the floor, a small wooden toy boat in his hand. He looks up at you and smiles, and you are struck by the sight of his hair, or rather, his lack of it. Like all children in your community, his head is shaved, except for one single, thick lock of hair that is left to grow long on the right side of his head. This is the side lock of youth, or the Horus lock. It is a distinctive and universal marker of childhood in Egypt. From the son of the pharaoh to the son of a humble farmer, all children, both boys and girls, wear their hair this way until they reach puberty. You sit down beside him and gently touch the long, braided lock. It is a tradition you followed without much thought. It is just what one does with children. But now, after what you have seen, you find yourself thinking more deeply about its meaning. Why this specific, peculiar hairstyle? On a practical level, it shares the same logic as the adult shaved head. It helps to keep the child cool and makes it much easier to control head lice, a constant nuisance, especially for children who play together in the dust. A mostly shaved head is a clean head, but the symbolism runs much deeper. The side lock is a direct connection to the god Horus. According to some versions of the mythology, Horus himself wore this side lock as a child. Therefore, to style your child's hair in this way is to place them under the direct protection of the god. It is a visual prayer, a constant, silent appeal to Horus to watch over your child and keep them safe from harm. In a world with high infant and child mortality rates, any form of magical protection is embraced with desperate sincerity. The side lock is an amulet grown from the child's own body. You watch your son play. The long braid sometimes falls over his face, and he impatiently pushes it aside. The style is not without its practical annoyances. When a child finally comes of age, the cutting of this side lock is a major rite of passage. For a boy, it signifies his transition to manhood. He will shave it off and begin to be seen as an adult, ready to learn a trade and take on family responsibilities. For a girl, the transition is linked to her readiness for marriage and motherhood. The public, ceremonial removal of the lock is a declaration that the protected period of childhood is over. A fascinating detail that Egyptologists have uncovered is the variety in how these side locks were worn and decorated. While the basic form is a single lock on the right side, tomb paintings show that they could be elaborately braided, sometimes interwoven with colorful threads or faience beads. In some cases, the end of the braid was capped with a decorative metal clasp, perhaps in the shape of a flower or a fish. The elaborateness of the side lock's decoration could be another subtle indicator of a family's wealth and status. The child of a nobleman might have a side lock adorned with gold thread, a clear sign of their privileged position. There is a scholarly debate, however, about the universality of this practice. While it is depicted everywhere in art, was it truly followed by everyone? Or was it more of an upper-class convention that was simplified or ignored by the lower classes? Some tomb scenes from workers' villages show children with fully shaved heads or with simple, short-cropped hair, suggesting that the elaborate side lock might have been an ideal not always adhered to by the common folk. It could be that for a poor family, the time and resources to maintain a long, clean, decorated lock of hair on an active child were simply not available. They might have opted for the more practical, fully shaved option. The art shows the ideal, but the reality on the ground may have been more varied. You think about your own childhood, the memory of that long lock of hair on the side of your head. You remember the day it was cut, the feeling of seriousness and importance, the sense that you were crossing a threshold. Now you are the parent, perpetuating the cycle. You are charged with protecting your child, and this hairstyle is one of your primary tools. It is a visual manifestation of your hope and your fear. Every time you look at your son, the side lock is a reminder of his precious, vulnerable state of childhood, and of the powerful gods you rely on to see him safely through it. It strikes you then that the Egyptian obsession with appearance starts at birth. From the moment you are born, your body is being shaped, decorated, and imbued with meaning. The side lock of youth is the first step. The kohl around your eyes is the next. The shaved head and wig, the pursuit of a slender figure, the henna on your nails, they are all chapters in a lifelong story of conforming to a powerful, shared aesthetic. Your identity is inseparable from these external markers. They tell the world who you are, what you believe, and where you belong. And it all begins with this single, strange, and secret lock of hair. More time flows by, as surely and steadily as the Nile itself. Your children are growing, their side locks getting longer. The world, however, is not as static as the Great Pyramids. Whispers and rumors travel along the trade routes, carried by sailors and merchants from across the Great Green Sea. They speak of new powers rising, of different ways of life, and then they are no longer whispers. They arrive. First, it is the Greeks, with their strange language, their different gods, and their shockingly different ideas of beauty. Later, the Romans will follow, bringing their own powerful culture. You start to see the changes in the bigger towns and cities. Like Alexandria, it is a slow, subtle fusion at first. You see a wealthy Egyptian official's wife, who still wears the traditional tripartite, wigged, fine linen dress. But her kohl line is a little less dramatic, a little more subtle. Perhaps she has abandoned the green eyeshadow in favor of a more natural look favored by the Greek women. You might see a Greek merchant who has adopted the practical Egyptian habit of lining his eyes with kohl to protect against the sun. But he keeps his full, curly beard, a sign of masculinity in his culture that is the complete opposite of the clean-shaven Egyptian ideal. This cultural cross-pollination is fascinating and, to some, a little unsettling. The clear, solid lines of your own culture's beauty standards begin to blur at the edges. They knew. Hybrid aesthetic starts to emerge, particularly among the very wealthy and the well-traveled who want to appear cosmopolitan and modern. One of the most noticeable changes is in hairstyling. While the traditional wig remains a powerful symbol, especially for formal and religious occasions, you start to see more people, particularly those in Greek-influenced circles, growing their own hair. The new ideal, imported from the Hellenistic world, is for curly, voluminous hair, often arranged in complex styles with knots and braids on top of the head. For an Egyptian, who has always associated a shaved head with cleanliness and a wig with status, seeing a high-status woman display her own natural hair in public is a radical shift. Some Egyptian women even begin to use curling irons, heated bronze rods to try and imitate the curly styles of the Greeks. The ideal body shape also starts to shift. The slender, youthful, slightly androgynous Egyptian ideal begins to compete with the Greek appreciation for a different kind of physique. Greek art, as you see in the new statues being erected in the cities, celebrates a more athletic, muscular female form and a softer, more rounded male form. You see this reflected in the fashion. Some Egyptian women start to wear the Greek chiton instead of the traditional kohl's iris. The chiton is a draped garment, often belted high under the bust, which creates a different silhouette, one that flows and moves with the body rather than creating the straight, column-like shape of the traditional Egyptian dress. Even the concept of color changes. You start to see more vibrant, varied colors in clothing, a departure from the traditional, almost universal, white linen. The Greeks bring new dyes into love for bold colors like purple and deep red, and these begin to appear in the wardrobes of the fashionable elite. There is a fascinating and complex debate among historians about the famous Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Was she a Greek or an Egyptian beauty? She was ethnically Macedonian Greek, a descendant of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals. She was often depicted in the Greek style on coins, with a melon hairstyle and a prominent hooked nose. However, on temple reliefs in Egypt, she had herself depicted as a traditional Egyptian pharaoh, with the classic wig, kohl-lined eyes, and slender figure, making offerings to Egyptian gods. This was a masterful piece of political branding. She was presenting two different versions of her beauty to two different audiences, using aesthetics as a political tool to legitimize her rule in both the Greek and Egyptian worlds. She was a chameleon, a walking embodiment of this cultural fusion. A curious little detail of this era is the introduction of new cosmetic ingredients. The Romans, in particular, were obsessed with elaborate skincare. They brought with them recipes for face masks and creams that used ingredients like rosewater, honey, and egg yolks, which were different from the mineral and fat-based cosmetics of traditional Egypt. You might see a vendor at the market selling a new, fragrant Roman face cream right next to his traditional pots of kohl and malachite. For you, living in a more traditional town, these changes are distant ripples at first. You stick to the old ways. You teach your daughter to grind kohl the way your mother taught you. You ensure your son's side lock is neatly braided. The old ways are the good ways. They are blessed by the gods and sanctioned by millennia of tradition. But you cannot help but feel a sense of things shifting, of the world growing larger and more complicated. The clear-cut certainty of what it means to be beautiful, to be Egyptian, is no longer as simple as it once was. You see an old priest one day, his head shaved, his eyes lined with the thick, black kohl of the old style. He looks at a group of young men with their own hair and their brightly colored tunics, and he shakes his head with a look of disapproval. In his eyes, you see a deep-seated anxiety that the very identity of his people is being diluted, that the sacred traditions are being eroded by these new, foreign fashions. The battle for the soul of Egypt is being fought right there, on the faces, hair, and bodies of its people. Life settles into this new, slightly more complex rhythm, a blend of ancient traditions and foreign influences. One afternoon, you are visiting a friend who has a reputation for being particularly interested in health and beauty. She is excited to show you her latest acquisition, a new recipe for a face mask, one she claims is based on ancient wisdom, passed down from the time of the great pharaohs. She assures you it has miraculous properties for smoothing the skin and giving it a youthful glow. You follow her into the cool interior of her house, where she proudly shows you the ingredients laid out on a stone slab. Your eyes widen. The primary ingredient is a pile of dried, crumbly, grayish material that you recognize with a jolt of disbelief. It is crocodile dung. Next to it is a small bowl of donkey milk and a pot of honey. She explains the process with great seriousness. You are to grind the dung into a fine powder. Mix it with the milk to form a thick paste, and then apply it to your face, leading it on until it dries. You try to maintain a polite expression, but it is difficult. This is one of those moments where you have to question the wisdom of your ancestors. The use of animal excrement in medicine and cosmetics is a strange and stomach-turning footnote in Egyptian history. The logic, as far as you can understand it, is based on a kind of sympathetic magic. The crocodile is a creature of immense power and vitality, a being connected to the primordial forces of the Nile. Therefore, its waste must contain some of that potent life force. The donkey milk was famously associated with beauty. You have heard stories that the great Queen Cleopatra bathed in it daily to keep her skin soft. Your friend enthusiastically offers to mix up a batch for you. You politely decline, claiming you have to be somewhere. As you walk away, you cannot help but shudder. It is a reminder that not all ancient beauty's secrets are glamorous. For every elegant kohl-lined eye or fragrant perfume, there is a bizarre and questionable practice lurking in the background. This is the world of folk remedies' undubious skincare, a side of Egyptian beauty that is not often depicted in the grand tomb paintings. The medical papi were filled with these kinds of recipes, prescriptions that straddle the line between medicine, magic, and utter nonsense. There are remedies for baldness that involve rubbing the fat of a lion, a hippo, a crocodile, a cat, a snake, and an ibex onto the scalp. The sheer difficulty of acquiring this menagerie of fats suggests it was likely more of a theoretical cure than a practical one. Another recipe to prevent hair from turning gray suggests boiling the blood of a black bull with tortoiseshell. It is a world away from the sophisticated chemistry that produced the synthesized lead chlorides in kohl. It highlights a strange duality in Egyptian science. On one hand, they were capable of precise engineering, complex chemistry, and keen astronomical observation. On the other hand, their medical and cosmetic practices were riddled with what we would now call superstition. There is an ongoing academic debate about how to interpret these bizarre recipes. Are we meant to take them literally? Some scholars argue that yes, the Egyptians genuinely believed in the efficacy of these ingredients. They lived in a world where the magical properties of an object were just as real as its physical ones. Others suggest that these recipes might be a form of coded language. Perhaps hippo fat was a colloquial term for a specific type of plant or mineral that we no longer recognize. A more cynical view is that some of these remedies were designed by healers to be so difficult or disgusting to procure that the patient would either give up and cure themselves, or they would be so invested in the process that they would convince themselves it worked a powerful placebo effect. A lesser known, but equally strange ingredient found in some cosmetic and medical preparations was bat's blood. It was thought to be a potent ingredient for spells and was sometimes included in poultices, though its exact purpose remains mysterious. It is a detail that adds another layer of the occult and the bizarre to the pursuit of health and beauty. You think about your own relatively simple beauty routine, your kohl, your shaved head, your occasional use of reed ochre for your lips. It seems so sensible and straightforward compared to the world of crocodile dung masks and hippo fat hair creams. You realize that there was likely a mainstream beauty culture. The things that everyone did, and then there were these fringe practices. The ancient equivalent of fad diets and weird beauty hacks that people would turn to out of desperation or a desire for a secret edge. This exploration of questionable remedies also makes you reconsider the safer ones. You think about the honey and sugar wax used for hair removal. While effective, it must have been incredibly painful. You think about the natron soap, which left your skin clean but also red, rough, and dry. Even the normal beauty standards required a high tolerance for discomfort and pain. Beauty was not a gentle pursuit. It demanded sacrifice, whether it was enduring the sting of waxing, the slow poisoning of lead, or, for the truly adventurous, the stench of a crocodile dung facial. It makes you appreciate the simple, elegant, and non-toxic beauty of a henna-stained hand all the more. It stands out as a rare instance where beauty was both effective and benign. You are at home, preparing the evening meal. You take a handful of barley from a storage jar and place it on your family's saddle quern. A large, slightly concave stone. You pick up the smaller, wolf-shaped grinding stone and begin the rhythmic, back and forth motion of grinding the grain into flour. It is hard work. Your shoulders and back ache from the repetitive strain. As you work, you can see fine particles of sand and grit from the stone mixing in with the flour. You try to blow some of it away, but you know it is a futile effort. The grit is now a part of your family's dinner. Later, as you sit down to eat the flatbread you have made, you chew carefully. There is a distinct, unavoidable crunchiness to it. You bite down awkwardly on a larger piece of grit, and a sharp, familiar pain shoots through your jaw. You wince and rub the side of your face. One of your back molars has been aching for weeks, a dull throb that sometimes sharpens into a searing pain. This is the price of bread, the foundation of your entire diet. This problem, the ubiquitous grit in the food, is the single most destructive force acting on the health of ordinary Egyptians. Yet, it is a silent, mundane crisis that no one talks about. It is not a dramatic poison like lead or a terrifying disease from the gods. It is just the slow, relentless erosion of your teeth, one gritty meal at a time. The condition, known to modern dentists as dental attrition, was a universal affliction. You look at the older members of your family. You can see the physical toll of a lifetime of gritty bread. They chew with difficulty, often favoring one side of their mouth. They complain of headaches, which you now realize are likely radiating pain from infected throats. They have trouble eating tougher foods, like roasted meat or fibrous vegetables, sticking to softer porridges and stews. Their diet becomes more limited, their nutrition suffers, and their overall health declines, all starting from the simple act of eating bread. The consequences go beyond just pain and difficulty eating. A severely worn tooth can expose the pulp chamber, the living core of the tooth containing nerves and blood vessels. This allows bacteria from the mouth to invade, leading to a painful infection and the formation of an abscess at the root of the tooth. You have seen the effects of this. A swollen, painful lump on the jaw, fever, and a general feeling of being unwell. With no antibiotics, such an infection could be a death sentence. The bacteria could spread from the jaw into the bloodstream, a condition known as sepsis, leading to organ failure and death. A shocking number of the skeletons found in Egyptian cemeteries show evidence of these severe dental abscesses. A bad tooth was one of the most common killers in your world. A small, sad detail that highlights this issue comes from the analysis of mummified bread loaves found in tombs. These loaves, preserved for thousands of years, have been put through laboratory analysis. When broken down, they are found to contain a significant percentage of sand and stone dust, confirming that even the bread prepared for the pharaohs in the afterlife was full of grit. It was an inescapable feature of the food production technology of the time. There is a debate among archaeologists about the primary source of this grit. Was it mainly from the grinding stones, as you assume, Or did a significant amount of sand get into the grain during the harvesting and threshing process? As wind blew deserts and across the fields and threshing floors, the answer is likely both. The entire food system, from field to table, was saturated with abrasive particles. Some studies have even analyzed the specific types of minerals found in the teeth of mummies to try and trace the stone used for their grinding querns back to specific quarries, a kind of dental geology. You touch your sore tooth again. You know there are remedies. The local wise woman might give you a poultice of honey and herbs to put on your gum, which might offer some temporary, soothing relief. A priest might sell you an amulet with an incantation against the worm that eats the tooth, as tooth decay was sometimes personified. But you know that none of these will solve the underlying problem. The tooth will continue to hurt. Eventually, it will either fall out, or the pain will become so unbearable that you might seek out someone to pull it. The dentist would be a strong man with a pair of bronze pliers and no anesthetic. The thought makes you shudder. This chronic dental pain casts a shadow over everything. It makes you irritable. It keeps you up at night. It makes it hard to enjoy a good meal. It is a constant, grinding reality that stands in stark opposition to the serene, smiling faces you see in art. The beautiful ideal of Egyptian life has no room for the grimace of a toothache. This is another part of the great, undrawable truth. The people who built this magnificent civilization, who created timeless art and worshipped powerful gods, did so while enduring a level of dental agony that would be unimaginable today. It is a quiet, personal, and universal form of suffering, baked into the very staff of life. The pain in your jaw eventually subsides to a manageable dull ache. Life goes on. One day, your daughter comes to you, her eyes wide with excitement. She has been looking at a trader's stall in the market and has seen a small, beautifully carved cosmetic spoon made of bone. Its handle shaped like a girl swimming with a lotus flower. She wants it more than anything. You look at the spoon, and you know that it is far more than a simple trinket. It represents a significant expense. This small, lovely object forces you to confront a hard reality. Maintaining the standard of beauty is an expensive business. You begin to take stock of the true economic cost of your family's beauty regimen. It is a budget that is never written down but is always present. First, there is the kohl, a small pot of good quality galena powder, enough to last a few months. Might cost the equivalent of several days' wages for a laborer. You could get cheaper, lower quality kohl, but it would be gritty and might be cut with charcoal, lacking the desirable shimmer and, you believe, the full magical potency. Then there is the oil. The animal fat or castor oil you mix with the kohl is a foodstuff. Every drop you put on your face is a drop you are not putting in your cooking pot. For the wealthy, who use expensive, fragrant moringa or bale-anoes oil for their cosmetics, the cost is even higher. These fine oils are luxury goods in themselves. And what about the tools? A simple clay pot for your kohl is cheap, but an alabaster one is an object of value. Your polished bronze mirror was a major purchase, something you saved for. You care for it meticulously because you know you cannot easily afford to replace it. A silver mirror, like the one you saw at the feast, would be a treasure, equivalent in value to a piece of furniture or a small animal. These are not disposable items. They are family heirlooms, part of your household's total wealth. The cost of fragrance is perhaps the most staggering. A single bead of myrrh or a small chunk of frankincense resin represents the culmination of a vast, international supply chain. A caravan of camels had to travel for months across dangerous deserts. A ship had to be built and crewed for a perilous journey down the Red Sea. Traders had to negotiate with foreign tribes. All of this risk and labor is concentrated into that one small, fragrant piece of resin you might burn as incense or crush for a breath mint. To use it is to burn money. Quite literally. This is why the most complex perfumes, like KY5, were reserved for temple gods and the pharaoh himself. Even something as seemingly simple as a clean linen tunic has a hidden economic story. To get that brilliant white, the linen has to be repeatedly washed with natron and laid out to bleach in the strong sun, a labor-intensive process. The constant washing wears the fabric out. A family's wardrobe is in a constant state of needing repair or replacement. This is where you see the starkest division between the classes. For you, beauty is a matter of careful budgeting and making do. You might reuse your kohl pot for years. You might have one wig, made mostly of plant fiber, that you wear only on special occasions. For the elite, beauty is an industry of conspicuous consumption. A wealthy woman might have a whole collection of wigs, one for every occasion. Her cosmetic chest would be a treasure trove of imported luxuries. She would have servants whose sole job was to prepare her cosmetics and assist with her daily beautification. Her ability to waste these resources to wear a perfume cone that melts all over her new dress is the ultimate expression of her family's power and wealth. There is a fascinating academic debate about the Egyptian economy and the role of vanity goods within it. Since they did not have coin money for much of their history, the economy ran on a system of barter and trade, where goods were valued against a unit of measure, like a specific weight of copper or grain. How did this work for luxury cosmetics? Some records from the workers' village of Deir al-Medina show artisans being paid for their work not just in grain and beer, but also in finished goods like furniture, cloth, and yes, cosmetics. It seems that these items were an integral part of the economic system, not just a frivolous extra. Arguing that kohl was a luxury good is complex. For the Egyptians, it was a necessity, so its role in the economy was fundamental. A quirky detail that highlights this is the existence of cosmetic strikes. Records show that the tomb builders of Deir al-Medina, who were skilled state employees, once went on strike, laying down their tools and protesting. Their list of grievances: their rations were late, and what was included in those rations, alongside their food and beer, the oils and fats they needed for their skin, to protect it from the dry climate and to make their cosmetics. They were protesting for their skincare products. It was not vanity. It was considered part of their essential payment for their labor. You look at your daughter's hopeful face. The bone spoon is beautiful, but it is a luxury you cannot afford this week. You promise her that if the harvest is good, you will see. It is a small lesson in the economics of beauty. The desire is infinite, but the resources are not, and your ability to bridge that gap, to afford the tools and materials of beauty, is a constant measure of your family's fortune in the unpredictable world of the Nile. Years later, you are now the elder in your family. Your son has had his side lock cut in a small family ceremony. Your daughter is married, and you have grandchildren who now wear the Horus lock. You sit in the shade, watching them play, and your mind wanders over the long arc of your life, a life defined and decorated by these ancient traditions. As you look at the kohl around your daughter's eyes, the wig she wears to the market, and the way she frets over the cost of a new mirror, you are struck by a powerful sense of continuity, but you also feel a sense of distance, as if you were looking at your own culture from a great height. You begin to see the echoes, the faint outlines of your world in the future. It is a strange, hazy premonition, you realize that the things you do, the ideals you strive for, are not unique to your time and place. They are deeply, fundamentally human, and they will ripple outwards through time in ways you cannot possibly imagine. Think of the cat eye, the bold, dramatic, winged eyeliner that you and every woman you know have worn your entire lives. You see it as the eye of Horus, a sacred symbol that you can almost picture a future where women in distant lands, thousands of years from now, will draw that same shape on their eyes. They will not know about Horus or Set. They will not be thinking about magical protection or deflecting the sun's glare. For them, it will simply be a fashion, a style they call a cat eye or a winged liner. They will see it as something new, something modern and daring, completely unaware that they are participating in a cosmetic ritual that is more than 3 years old. The shape will survive, but its original meaning will be lost, like a word from a forgotten language. And the wigs, you think of the heavy, hot, uncomfortable wigs that are so essential to your social life. You can imagine a future where people, for reasons of fashion, hair loss, or simple convenience, will also wear artificial hair. They will be made of materials you cannot even conceive of, light and realistic, but the basic principle will be the same: the desire to present a perfect, unchanging hairstyle to the world, to have good hair without relying on the unpredictability of your own, the obsession with a slender, youthful body. You have lived your whole life surrounded by art that celebrates this one specific ideal, ignoring the diverse realities of human bodies. You can sense that this, too, will be a recurring theme in human history. Future societies will have their own versions of this ideal, promoted through their own forms of art. They will have their own remedies and diets to pursue it, and there will be the same gap between the idealized image and the reality of most people's lives. The pressure to conform to a narrow standard of beauty, you realize, is a timeless human struggle. Even the dangers. You think of the lead in your kohl and your face paint. This slow, invisible poison you have been absorbing your whole life in the name of beauty. It seems certain that future generations, with all their advanced knowledge, will surely not make the same mistake. But then a flicker of doubt enters your mind. Will they, or will they find their own versions of lead, their own dangerous procedures and toxic chemicals that they willingly embrace in the pursuit of beauty, convinced that the rewards outweigh the risks, or blissfully unaware of the long-term consequences? The desire to be beautiful can be a powerful and blinding force. There is a major, ongoing discussion among historians and cultural theorists about the legacy of ancient Egypt in modern beauty. How much of our current aesthetic is a direct descendant of these Nile Valley traditions, and how much is just a case of different cultures independently arriving at similar solutions? The cat eye is oft uncited as a direct link. Revived in the 20th century after the discovery of King Tut's tomb sparked a global wave of Egyptomania. But other connections are more subtle. Is our modern use of perfume a direct continuation of their sacred and social practices, or just a parallel development? It is a classic nature versus nurture argument on a civilization scale. A weird little fact that bridges this gap is the modern analysis of ancient Egyptian skin creams. Scientists managed to recreate a fatty acid-based cream found in a 500-year-old cosmetic pot. When they tested it, they found it had properties very similar to modern high-end moisturizing creams. It seems that when it came to basic skincare, the Egyptians had developed formulas that were remarkably effective. A timeless solution to the universal problem of dry skin. You look at your own wrinkled hands, your skin darkened by a lifetime under the Egyptian sun. You have lived this world of dangerous beauty, You have felt the social pressure, paid the economic cost, and suffered the physical consequences. And you now see that your story is not just your own. It is a single chapter in a much, much longer book. The details will change. The gods will be forgotten. And the land itself may even look different. But the fundamental human desire to decorate, to transform, to idealize, and to project an image of ourselves to the world that, you suspect, is as eternal as the stars above and the Nile flowing at your feet. The sun is low in the sky, painting the western cliffs a brilliant, fiery orange. It is the end of another day, another tiny stitch in the vast tapestry of your life. You are sitting at the entrance of your home, the same doorway where this journey began so long ago. You are an old woman now. The aches in your bones are more pronounced. The metallic taste a constant, faint companion. The face that looks back at you from the polished bronze is a map of your years, a testament to a life lived under the Egyptian sun. Your eyesight is not what it once was, and you need your granddaughter's steady hand to help you apply your kohl in a thin, wavering line. But you still apply it. Every single day, you look out at the Nile, the great, eternal river that has been the backdrop for everything. It has given you life, food, and a rhythm to your days. But it has also brought disease. It has nourished the plants for your perfumes, but its waters have carried parasites. It is a river of dualities, of life and danger, much like the beauty standards you have lived by. You reflect on this lifelong pursuit of a very specific and very dangerous ideal. What was it all for? Was it worth the cost? You think of the kohl, the dark, laden shield against the sun. It protected your eyes from the glare, and perhaps even from infection. But it also slowly poisoned you. It was both a medicine and a toxin. A perfect, terrible paradox. You wore the eye of Horus for protection, believing in its magic, while the physical substance of the symbol itself was a source of harm. Which was more powerful, the belief or the substance? You still do not know. You think of the pale skin you once tried to achieve as a young woman. Using chalky, lead-based powders, you sought an image of leisure and high status. A look that said you did not have to toil in the fields. But the price was another layer of poison, another silent assault on your health. The ideal of beauty was an ideal of a life free from hardship, yet the very act of pursuing it was a hardship in itself. You touch your bald scalp under your simple linen headscarf. You remember the freedom of the shaven head, the relief from lice and heat, and you remember the oppressive weight of the fancy wigs, the social necessity of wearing a hot, heavy, expensive status symbol on your head. You gave up the comfort of your natural state for the comfort of fitting in, of looking the part. This is the central, nagging question that historians will debate for thousands of years, long after your language is no longer spoken. Were the ancient Egyptians victims of their own traditions, blindly following dangerous practices out of ignorance? Or were they making a conscious, or perhaps subconscious, trade-off? Did they, on some level, understand the risks, but decide that the social, religious, and psychological benefits of their beauty rituals were worth the physical price? Was it a calculated risk, a gamble for a better life and a better afterlife? The academic world is divided. Some see them as prisoners of a toxic tradition. Others see them as active agents, making rational choices within their own belief system. To you, it does not feel like a choice. It just feels like life. It is the way things are done. You remember the brief, strange fads, the whispers of crocodile, dung masks and hippo fat creams. It makes you smile, even in your rigid, tradition-bound world, there was room for the bizarre, for the desperate hope that some strange new concoction would grant the perfect beauty that always seemed just out of reach. It is a touchingly human folly. Your granddaughter comes and sits beside you. She is young and vibrant, her eyes perfectly lined, her skin smooth. She represents the next link in the chain, the continuation of it all. You look at her, and you do not feel regret. You feel a deep, abiding sense of connection. You have participated in a grand, ancient drama. You have painted your face with the symbols of your gods. You have scented your skin with the resins of distant lands. You have shaped your body to match the eternal ideals of your people. You have lived a beautiful, dangerous, and thoroughly Egyptian life. The last sliver of the sun disappears behind the cliffs. The sky turns a deep, velvety purple. Your final reflection is this: beauty was a language. It was how you spoke to your neighbors, to your superiors, and to your gods. It was how you declared your identity, your health, your status, and your piety. It was a language of hope, a hope for protection in this life and perfection in the next. And like any powerful language, it had the power to build and to create, but also the power to harm. You lived and breathed this language, and as you close your eyes, it's silent, beautiful, toxic vocabulary is the last thing on your mind. The world around you begins to soften, the edges blurring, as if seen through an old bronze mirror. The sharp lines of the day dissolve into the gentle curves of slumber. You can feel the coolness of the night air on your skin, a welcome relief, carrying the faint, distant scent of the Nile, of damp earth and river reeds. The sounds of the village fade into a low, steady hum, a lullaby sung by the land itself. You are no longer in the mud brick house. You are floating, gently, on a ceremonial barge drifting down a river of stars. The sky above is a deep, endless indigo, and the stars are not points of light, but shimmering lotus blossoms opening and closing in a slow, silent rhythm. The air is filled with the scent of Wi-Fi, that sacred, 16-ingredient perfume, a fragrance of peace, of dreams, of divinity. Your body feels light, unburdened. The dull ache in your bones has vanished. The weight of your wig is gone. You are simply you, a spirit drifting towards the field of reeds. The journey is calm. The waters of the night sky river are perfectly smooth. You see figures on the bank, the idealized, perfect figures from the tomb paintings. They raise their hands in welcome, their kohl-lined eyes serene and knowing. They are whole. They are healed. They are at peace. And you realize, in this space between waking and dreaming, that the lifelong pursuit of beauty was not about the lead, or the wigs, or the pain. It was about this. It was about striving for a vision of perfection, a vision of yourself made whole, made eternal. It was a rehearsal for this final, peaceful journey. You feel a profound sense of release, a letting go of all the striving, all the anxiety. You have done enough. You are enough. You are drifting now, drifting into the deep, quiet, restorative darkness, into the heart of the Egyptian night.